minute seems to last forever, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
As you watch the clock.
It's been very short on meetings for me because
I had a couple of extension ones.
Never, I got a list 3 miles long here.
you've been on vacation.
Well, that was 2 weeks ago.
Chair.
All right, we'll call the order of the board meeting. Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wait, got rushed there.
Make sure the mics are on.
All right, roll call, Beth.
Sure. Commissioner Schlangen?
Here.
Commissioner Heinen?
Here.
Commissioner Gopinski?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Pop?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to approve the agenda. Any added,
No changes.
okay, no changes?
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, county board meetings are broadcast live and video recorded on YouTube. Please refrain from speaking from the audience area and come to the podium so that viewers can hear you. The county board observes Robert's Rules of Orders for its meetings, so please obtain the board chair consent before addressing the county board. Public comments are generally reserved for the open forum segment or public hearings. However, public comment on other agenda items may be allowed at the discretion of the board chair. As we begin today, please turn off your cell phones or turn the cell phones to vibrate. Thank you. Open forum.
Mike is here.
All right.
Mike, there was two before me, was there not?
They were here for another issue earlier. Yeah, and they're gone. That was Jane and
Okay.
Yeah.
Dan.
Yep.
Okay.
Good morning, Mike Lewandowski, 11709 85th Avenue Northeast, Foley. Here today just to, I reviewed the minutes from the last meeting, and it appears that you have set to consider a resolution today on the flag and the seal issue. And so it looks like it's kind of got the opinion of the board already, and so I'm just here giving some support from my perspective and from people that I talk to in the county, and support your pending resolution to not make any changes. And Troy walked in this morning, and he's wearing that state seal, and I wore it for over 30 years. And now for someone to say all of a sudden in 2024 that it's not right and that it's something's wrong with it, I think it's offensive. And so that's where I stand on it. And so I commend the board for making or considering this resolution. I know there's the board has a financial stake in it as well, and I understand that. But I thought to myself, if the state of Minnesota were to come to you with a pot of gold and say, here's some state money, change everything out from his badge to everything on your squad cars, flags, whatever, I would hope that the board would still say, nope, we're good. We like our seal and our flag, because that's state money, or even it comes from the federal government. It's coming from our taxpayer dollars, and so I would hope that if somebody comes up with that proposal for state or federal money, that the board would still stand by their resolution, and it's the right thing to do. So, thank you. I appreciate your
Thanks,
work.
Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Chair. So, I don't know, Mike, if you know, but they're taking it up at the state capitol today.
I followed a little bit.
Yeah, so it'd be a good time to maybe send your representative, your state senator, an email.
Oh, they've got it.
Okay.
Thank you again. All right, is there anybody else in the audience for open forum?
That was it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Items 1 through 4. What would board members like to do?
Mr. Chair, I'd like number 2 pulled.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to pull number 3 as long as our sheriff's here. We can have a little discussion about it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we can do 2 and 3 together then.
Yep.
Okay. Any others to be pulled? If not, what are the wishes?
I'll move for approval of consent agenda item 1.
I'll second.
Okay.
I'll second
we-
that.
We got a motion for consent agenda item number 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign, motion carries. All right. Items 2 and 3, Commissioner Heinen and Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Chair, I seen Sheriff Troy Heck in the audience. I thought I'd let him have the opportunity to address this in person.
Very good. All right, so let's see here. Number 2 was the boarding rate.
Boarding,
All right.
yep.
So, at a previous committee of the whole, we had a brief discussion about the rate that our jail charges to house inmates for other counties. It's currently sitting at $55 per inmate per day. It's been there for a very long time. This had been one fee that we had, at least I had tagged to look at by the end of the year, and received some encouragement from the board to bring this forward before the end of the year. So when we looked at the costs that we incur for operating the jail, I looked at our net budget and I took out all the costs that don't have anything to do with an inmate just sitting in the facility and divided that over a full jail. It came out to just over $100, $103 per inmate per day. Obviously, we're well below that. So my proposal is to raise that to a figure that more closely recovers our costs. Keep in mind also that we don't want to price ourselves out of the market, which is why I provided the board with the comparable prices from the counties around us. As noted in the agenda item, Stearns charges $60 a day. Mille Lacs has a rate that varies between $75 and $125 a day. Morrison's base rate is at $55, but that's at the discretion of the sheriff, and Sherburne is at $127 a day. When I did the average, I took Stearns out. They simply don't board because they're the ones seeking boarding services, and that average brings you up for the other 3 counties to $86 a day, and that is what influenced the decision to bring to the board a request to bring it up to $80 a day, hoping that that gets us closer to recovering our costs, but also doesn't price us out of the market and will hopefully keep us competitive to bring some additional boarding into the jail to make it a little easier on the tax rolls.
Mr. Chair. Troy, how many inmates are we boarding right now from other counties?
At any one time, we have probably between 5 and 7 inmates from out of county. That could be state or federal or other county inmates.
Okay.
Now, I'll note that for the past probably year to 18 months, we haven't aggressively sought to get people to bring their inmates here because of the issues we've been having with retention and recruitment. We're starting to dig ourselves out of that hole a bit, and so we'll be putting it out there that we have room in specifically work release and also some room in our general population for other counties that might want to house with us.
Okay, with that, I'll make a motion to approve number 2.
Okay, we got a motion. No, do we want to do both at one time?
We have to do them separately.
Yeah.
They were sorry.
We'll do a motion. Okay.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve consent agenda item number 2. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes. Okay.
Right, Sheriff, thank you for the overview. Basically, just looking for the same type of thing on item 3. I think it's really good for, you talked about us having the conversation during the cow, but it'd be maybe a good overview for the public to hear it, at a board setting to understand what it is we're doing instead of just on a consent.
Certainly. So we have folks that we house in our jail, and obviously one of the things that we're required to do is feed them. We've got a long-standing relationship with Summit Food Services. I think they've been our vendor. They've changed their name a couple times, but they've been our vendor basically from the start. Last year, it's no secret that food prices have been crazy out of control with inflation. And we had a couple contract changes with Summit last year. During those contract changes, we did go out and receive some other bids, and Summit continued to be in the same, they were competitive with any other options that we had out there. This year, they came to us and are asking for a I guess what I see as a much more reasonable increase compared to what we saw in 2023 and even 2022, basically about 5.2% across the board for all their pricing structure for the cost to feed our inmates.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Certainly.
That I'll move approval of item 3 on the
Second.
consent.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve consent agenda item number 3. All in favor? Aye. Same sign, motion carries. All right.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sheriff. We'll move on to County Engineer Chris Bird. Consider a bridge priority resolution.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Just allow me a moment to bring up my presentation. There we go. Okay. So, as you know, each year we have a number of bridges that we have to inspect. Total in our county, we have 111 structures that are considered a bridge by state statute standards. In Minnesota, a bridge is anything with a span of 10 feet or greater. So it's not always a traditional bridge that you may think of with piling and beams and stuff. It could be box culverts or multiple large culverts next to each other that when you add up their openings, it's greater than 10 feet. So those are considered bridges that we have to inspect periodically. Not everyone gets inspected every year. But this past year in 2023, we had to inspect 64 bridges. Each year it does seem like there's new requirements for inspecting. A lot of these requirements originate at the federal level. So we have a national bridge inventory and we have national bridge standards that theoretically each state is inspecting their bridges to the same standards. So a poor bridge in Minnesota probably looks very similar to a poor bridge in Mississippi, and that's how they help allocate funds. So this year we have, I said 64, 65 bridges were inspected. Those bridges get inspected, we rate them on different criteria, and each year this Bridge Replacement and Improvement Management Tool, abbreviated BRIM, is used to calculate which bridges are eligible for replacement and therefore receive state bridge bond replacement funds. They have to have this local planning index, LPI, of 60 or below to become eligible to receive state funds for replacement. This year we have an additional bridges that meet that requirement. What you see here, what's in green, are bridges that have already been planned and are receiving state funds for replacement, so they're scheduled for replacement. What you see in yellow here are these bridges that are eligible. We have started the planning or started the design plans on them, but we have not secured funding for replacement just yet. And then what you see here on red is what we're going to talk about today, is as a result of this past year's inspection cycle are now eligible for replacement. And so I'll go through some pictures here to just kind of show maybe what's causing them to be downrated so much and become eligible for replacement. The first bridge we come to is 05502. That is CASA 12 over the Elk River. And there it is on the map. Here's Rice, so northeast of Rice and northeast of Gilman. It's over a tributary to the Elk River. There are two bridges pretty close to each other. It's not over the Elk River, it's over an unnamed stream that does connect to the Elk River south of the structure. It's a timber structure. It was built in 1966. So the timber beams are starting to deteriorate. Any creosote that they used back then to preserve them is probably just about gone, and we're starting to see significant deterioration in the deck here. This is what they call a glulam bridge. It's a bunch of timber beams stacked on end and laminated together to create a bridge deck. The next bridge we come to is Bridge 92792. This is County Road 56 over Bunker Hill Creek. It was constructed in 1971, and that'll be kind of a common theme as we go through these bridges. They were all built around the same time frame. Therefore, they're all aging out or becoming eligible for replacement about the same time. So County Road 56 over Bunker Hill. There it is northeast of Rice on 56. This is another timber structure with timber piling. We're starting to see deterioration in the wood piling at the water level. The last couple years, because of the conditions, the water levels have been a lot lower than they have been in previous years. So we're seeing things that we haven't seen before below that normal water line. And what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of deterioration in our piling that sits in that water for so long. So this one, we're starting to see what we consider section loss and deterioration in the pile. Section loss means the area or the cross-sectional area is a lot smaller than what it was when it was new. Also, this bridge has some other things going on with it. If you could see in the picture, this guardrail should be horizontal and flat, but at this pier, it's slightly elevated. So it's either the abutment is starting to settle, or it's possible that there's frost heave in the timber piling actually pushing this up. So this is a structure that we have nailed pins at certain locations across the bridge, and we go out there and we survey it periodically to check for any movement. We're not seeing any more vertical movement, but the last inspection noted that there may be some lateral movement. And when I say lateral movement, it could be a few millimeters, but it's enough to cause concern and for us to watch it. The next bridge is L00110, or L0010, built in 1957. It's CASA 12 over another tributary to the Elk River. Did I have the wrong slide in earlier? Didn't we talk about 12? Oh, I did. I had the wrong picture here in this bridge. So this, I misspoke earlier. So this one earlier is not this picture. What we talked about earlier is over here. Now we're talking about this bridge, tributary to the Elk River. This one is a timber box culvert. So nowadays we build a lot of box culverts, but they're all precast concrete. This one was built in 1957 out of wood. Once again, that wood is deteriorating, and we're seeing significant deterioration in the wood members at that water line. Another picture here is, this is how we know any wood preservation is gone, because the wood is actually wicking and drawing the moisture up into the wood. And so that's an indication that any wood preservative is gone. It shouldn't be able to wick the moisture through the wood there. So once again, not what you think of as a bridge, but in Minnesota it is categorized as a bridge and therefore makes it eligible for bridge replacement funds. Here we go. Now we're getting into some larger structures. Bridge 05509, CASA 6 over the St. Francis, built in 1967. There it is in the southern part of the county, east of Duelm, west of Glendorado. This is what we call a concrete channel span bridge. And we're seeing this typically across the state, is the reinforcing steel in the bottom is corroding, and the concrete will no longer adhere to those steel bars, and it's starting to pop off. This is also built on what we call steel shell pile. It's a steel casing, like a steel pipe that's driven into the ground and filled with concrete. This is a close-up picture. Any paint or waterproofing has gone, and now that steel is starting to deteriorate. So those are the big concerns with this. Even where the concrete is not spalled off or fallen off, you see the staining through the cracks, the reddish iron color. That means water is getting to that steel, and it's rusting and coming through the concrete. Next bridge is 05517, CASA 25 over the Elk River. This one was built in 1972, and it is another timber structure. Even though it is on steel piling, we still have timber beams and a timber deck. That's where it's located, just west of Popple Creek, where CASA 3 and CASA 4 intersect. Once again, we're seeing deterioration in the wood members just over time. Water is getting to those wood pieces, and waterproofing is no longer existence and letting water intrude and deteriorate the wood members. This is just a picture of the wood beams where we're seeing some of that deterioration. To test these things is a visual inspection, but a lot of times we're tapping on the wood with hammers. There's also probes that we can borrow from the state that measure the section loss or the amount of deterioration across the width of those pieces, so to speak. That's how we know that we're seeing deterioration in those. This does have some of the waterproofing still existence, but if you look down, now that the water level was low back this fall, at that water line or below, any painting or waterproofing is gone, and we're starting to see corrosion in the steel members as well. So another concern. The next is 05515. This is CASA 4 over the Elk River, nearby the bridge that we just saw, so just downstream. This one was built in 1973, so a year later. You think back on history, you wonder if the state came up with some money all of a sudden over a period of a couple of years and counties were able to replace bridges all of a sudden. The downside is then those bridges need to be replaced in a similar amount of time later. So here we are, just downstream, a year later. This one is on steel piling. And what we're seeing is section loss in the steel piling, once again, at that water level. So enough of it has rusted and fallen away that the flange and the webbing of the steel piling is not as thick as it was when it was once constructed. So less steel area means that there is a reduced capacity. We have these things load rated. We have to hire a consultant to do that. And sometimes we have to post our bridges for lower weight across them if we have enough deterioration, enough section loss. This is another channel span, so we're seeing the same thing where that steel reinforcing member inside the concrete has gotten water and salt to it and now is rusting. You see all this discoloration on this concrete pier here. And we know that rust is coming through these beams and staining the concrete below it. So just another concern.
What bridge number was that?
This one was 05515, CASA 4 over the Elk River. So this would be the last one on the resolution list here. So the next step to make these eligible for state replacement funds would be to adopt what they call a priority resolution. Before today, everything 05507 and up was already on a resolution that was adopted last year and shared with the state. And these are the bridges that we were currently securing funding for or we're planning to receive funding for. So I'm wanting to add these 6 bridges to the resolution today. And I do have an updated resolution. It was edited to have the graph look a little bit better with the gray and white rows. But and then we put a priority year. And this is just to notify the state of when we would like to replace these. These are not set in stone because, once again, these are going to be subject to when the state is able to pass a bonding bill and provide funding to counties and cities to replace their bridges. So those dates may change, but we won't get on a replacement list unless we have this resolution. So that's why it's in the county's best interest to go ahead and adopt this resolution today. We will send to the state, and then we will start planning on preparing construction plans. So then if the state does come through someday with funding, we're ready to go. This list represents almost $7.5 million of total bridge replacement costs. Most of that we're hoping can come from the state bridge replacement funds, and then you see we have almost about $2 million of federal funds that we've already are committed to receive. But it does mean that Benton County will need to come up with about $950,000 of local funds to match those funds over the next 5 years. So just something to keep in mind in a few months or in a month or two when we start talking about our 5-year plan. These are structures we're going to have to fit into the 5-year plan. So, with that being said, I'll stand for any questions, but the action we're looking for is hopefully adoption of this resolution.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
how many of these are under construction and is it gonna coordinate with the construction that's being done on the roads?
Yeah, so none of these right now are under construction. So, here, we'll go back to my list. This list, the green ones are the ones that we do have funding for, and we have construction plans. So we're just waiting for later years. Let's see here. 13 and 12, since we have some federal money, those will probably be the ones that will be reconstructed first. Interestingly enough, a lot of these are on roads that we have just recently improved. So most likely they won't coincide with any road construction projects, but due to the proximity of them, if we receive funding for bridges around the same time, it would behoove us to combine or tie the bridge projects and hopefully get some economy of scale and some savings there. That if we have similar structures in close proximity, we'll let those under one contract because of, and hopefully achieve some cost savings there. So, yeah, that's kind of the downside. None of these are really on roads that we foresee road reconstruction projects within the next 5 years.
Commissioner Johnson.
Chris, couple questions. The first item up there in Maywood is, if I recall correctly, is that the one that we reapplied for and received?
That's correct. This is that township road. So we received notification late last year that it did get funded. So,
because that particular bridge has been out and that road was closed for a while.
yeah, it's been closed almost 5 years now. So, and just as an update, the township is working on securing additional easements so we can replace that.
But they've had their local match in place for quite a while.
Correct. Yep, they committed to those. The townships. Under state rules, they have to commit $20,000 towards it, and the rest can be covered by township bridge funds.
And the 20,000 is at 10 for design and 10 for.
10, yeah, that's right. 10 goes towards engineering design, and 10,000 goes towards the construction costs of it.
Okay.
So.
Then the other clarification you'd mentioned in your when you're showing us these items that resolution list is a little bit different than what I have in front of me. So I just wanted to make sure that the one you have is the updated one.
Yeah, so I have a new copy here, and
Okay.
I can let's end this show, and I can just go ahead and bring that up on screen. This is the resolution that we'd be asking to consider today. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the following bridges are high priorities for replacement, major rehabilitation, or removal, and Benton County intends to replace, rehabilitate, or remove these bridges as soon as possible when funds are available. And then there's the list with the local planning index. If you're keen, you'll notice that I say that it becomes eligible when it has an LPI of 60 or less, and this one has 61. Me and the assistant engineer thought that we could benefit by going ahead and putting on the resolution now and prioritizing it. I know state aid every year puts lists together to share with the state legislature of projects. It's quite possible that the next inspection cycle, this could drop again and make it eligible. We just thought it would be go ahead to get it on some of those state lists as future replacements. That's why it's the last one on the list, and we're not proposing it to replace it any sooner than 2028.
Mr. Chair.
Hey,
So on some of these, as you go back, and how often do we have to re-inspect them? Every other year?
Well, now these are so low, these are probably going to start being a 12-month or annual inspection, where before some of them might have only been 2 years. Box culverts, if they're in really good condition, we can get those out to a 4-year inspection cycle. But as they get older and more defects are found, the rules just kind of start squeezing that inspection cycle to kind of force us to inspect it more often.
So if we have one of these bridges that really gets to the point where we have to load restrict it almost to nothing, there is an emergency bridge fund too, right?
Well, it depends on where it is. If it's a state aid, I think there might be some emergency state aid funds for it. If it's a county road, like County Road 56,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So, There may be. We haven't had to use it, and I guess
Didn't we, what'd we use on 42? When we closed that bridge?
well, it did not actually end up getting the emergency funds. We actually benefited because of the timing of when it closed. It was kind of later in the construction year. And what happened was, in some other areas of the state, there were some larger bid projects that year that came in under bid. So statewide, it made some additional funds available that state aid ended up awarding us some of those bigger projects. And at that time, there were some bigger projects down in the cities that, their projects, they're like $2 and $3 million to replace a bridge. And if it comes in 5% under, some of those collectively was enough to fund one of our box culvert projects. So yeah, we didn't actually receive any emergency funding. It just, timing was right for us that year that other projects came in under their estimated amount, and Benton County was the beneficiary of that.
And I know you have load limits on the County Road 12 over Little Rock Creek.
Mm-hmm.
What about the county road over County Road 40? And I don't believe there's anything over 56 yet on limits, is there?
I can't recall off the top of my head. 56. I don't know. It might be. No, you're right. That's the junction of County Road 40. Yeah, so it's not. But
we don't have any load restrictions on there yet, huh?
Not yet. So, but it's something that we may have to consider as things continue. So, if the next year or so, if things continue, that may be something we have to do just to keep it until we get those replacement funds in. So,
Couple things, Chris, for the design and construction documents, do you guys do those in-house?
No,
At
since
all?
some of these,
Okay.
some of these are bigger structures, we're gonna have to consult with a bridge consultant to actually design the bridge.
Okay.
Now, if it was a box culvert, we would consult out the hydraulic risk analysis. So, and that's just a few $1,000s to do that, because that involves some complicated software that we don't own. And then we could put together construction plans. But these actual structures with piling that gets driven and beams, we'll need to use a consultant to design those.
Okay.
So,
And from my standpoint, I'm glad that we're hearing about this 900,000 over the next 5 years now versus, 5 years from now saying we gotta come up with it, because
Sure.
we're still getting $6.5 million to help fund the rest of it.
Right.
yeah.
The problem I see is in 2 or 3 years, we're gonna have another whole list of bridges.
Well, that's the reality. 111 structures. I mean, the age of these structures, they designed them for a 50, maybe a 60-year lifespan, and that's where we're up against. And a lot of things change. And I'm not picking on farmers, but you think about the size of the average tractor in 1965 versus the size of it now, and even just the traffic volumes. I mean, just a lot more commodities are driving across our county roads than they did back in the mid-60s. So all that contributes. But now we're designing bridges to hopefully last 100 years. But with 111 structures in our county, that means every year for the next 100 years, at least one structure should be getting replaced. So just we're in that time frame. There was a lot of things built in the 60s and early 70s that the next decade or so we'll be replacing those structures.
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna move approval of our bridge priority resolution as presented.
Yep, I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Chris. Now you're on to resolution for a highway construction over county ditch.
Yeah, so since we're in the regular board meeting, I'm standing for you as the county highway engineer. But in state statute, there is state statute 163.17, drainage system affecting highway alterations. So basically what this statute says is when a road authority wants to do work in the county ditch, they need to notify the or the ditch authority. And this is where it gets confusing because it's us for both of them. We're the road authority and the ditch authority, but we'll have the ditch authority meeting later. It says here that the road authority must adopt a resolution that says that we are going to do a minor alteration to the ditch. But this resolution is also certifying that our project will not affect the functionality nor the hydraulic capacity of the ditch. And let me bring up the road construction plans, because it also says that we have to file with the auditor in which the the ditch lies, the construction plans. So this is County Road 7, crosses ditches 15, 13, and 9, and 12. So, as you know, the road construction project, we're going to reconstruct it, and we're actually going to widen the roadway. We're going to put shoulders on there and 4-to-1 slopes. So that means the culverts at these crossings are actually going to get removed and replaced with new culverts, but also lengthened. So if you think about that channel and where that culvert lies, that's where it kind of gets in that statute area that we're doing some minor alterations to that ditch channel because we're going to put a longer culvert in there. Yeah, so that's where we'll file these plans with the auditor at this same time. But I'm standing before you as the county highway engineer, testifying that our project is not going to affect the functionality nor the hydraulic capacity of the ditch system. It is our responsibility as the road authority to pay for the replacement of those crossings when it crosses the ditch. So we're prepared to do that, and those costs have already been incorporated into the estimate for CASA 7. What will happen next is we'll convene the ditch authority later this morning, and we'll actually have to set a public hearing because of this resolution. We're doing it all on the same day, and sometimes it doesn't happen the same day. So later this morning, the drainage authority will have to set a public hearing date to actually hear and then adopt the findings in order to allow the road authority to make those minor alterations in those several county ditches.
Mr. Chair, Chris, and just for clarification for the public and for the record, when you're talking about this county ditch, you're talking about our drainage system, not a county road ditch.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. That is correct. Yeah. So the road has road ditches that parallel the roadway, but these would be the county drainage ditches that kind of cross perpendicular to the roadway in these several locations. And once again, those are county ditch number 9, branch 1, county ditch number 9, the main trunk, county ditch number 12, ditch number 13, and ditch 15, branch 2, that the road construction project will be crossing.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of a resolution for highway construction over a county ditch as presented.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any communication? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Chris.
That's all the items I had for road at this time, but I'll be around the rest of the morning.
All right. Thank you again. Monty.
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll go Christine, sorry.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I'm looking to dissolve one of my office technician positions and create an additional deputy auditor treasurer position. Currently, we have 4 office technician positions, 3 with the DMV addendum and 1 with the auditor treasurer addendum. It would be changing the one with the auditor treasurer addendum into the deputy auditor treasurer position.
Mr. Chair, so we do have a deputy auditor
We do,
ready to?
yep.
So do we need 2 of them?
With the amount of duties that this person would have, it's very parallel to the deputy auditor treasurer now, so.
As I see it comes at a cost, and I was just wondering, I mean, why do we need 2 deputy auditor treasurers?
Mr. Chair, I think one thing to consider is, with what's going on with our drainage systems, we put
Yeah,
a
a lot of extra work in
the
them.
office.
So this person would be doing the same thing as the deputy auditor treasurer.
I know everything adds up, but $2,000 we're gonna have a lot of ditch issues coming for next few years.
That office can be very busy with that.
Yeah.
I think Kristen would attest to there's a
Yeah,
additional
and
work.
this person also helps with managing the elections as well, so with all that coming up, happy election day.
What are the wishes? I'll move approval of dissolving the office technician auditor treasurer addendum and replace it with deputy auditor treasurer position.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other communication? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
We got a big crowd today.
Now you're up,
Ready, sir.
Monty.
It was my understanding that the board wanted to understand policies and practices the departments use to approve overtime or comp time. And I thought the best way to do that would be to invite departments in here and describe really for themselves what happens in their departments, because I was anticipating you all might have questions and then they could be here to answer them. So I don't have a specific order of, who might want to come up. See, Mr. Chair, you might just want to ask for the first volunteer, and we'll just go from there and go around the room. There might be some folks that are online. I thought that might be the best way to do it. Just a very brief description of your policies, and I prompted everyone beforehand of what you'll be asking for. So.
Do you want to start, Monty?
Sure, I can start.
Okay.
Yeah, there's really not a lot of overtime or comp time in the immediate administrator's area. It may be more like, a seasonal thing. Let's just say it's W-2 or 1099 time, and folks may need to put in a little extra time before that. There really isn't sort of like a day by day, oh, well, today I've got to put in extra 2 hours. Is that okay? It's more a general understanding of, well, okay, I've got this big project I'm working on. It may require extra time. Okay, that's great. It isn't a day by day kind of thing. But again, in our immediate administrative area, we don't really see a lot of comp time or overtime. But again, it's typically project specific.
Mr. Chair, Monty, would it be safe to say that if that was needed, that would be approved ahead of time before the work was accomplished?
I would say yes. I mean, again, it's a general understanding. It's like, okay, again, I use the example, it's W-2 time.
Yep.
Right, or another good example right now, Mr. Chair, is, for example, our person who handles recruitments is up to here in many recruitments. So there's a general understanding, she's got to get these recruitments done for departments. So it may require a little extra time. Again, I want to be clear. It's not a specific, okay, next week I need to put an extra 2 hours. It's a general understanding of what is going on at the moment, and I may need to put in some extra time. So I don't want to lead you astray and give you the impression it's a specific day by day or week by week kind of thing. It's a general understanding.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And from my standpoint, I look at when you're knee deep in something and it's 4:30 and you're ready to leave and you got another hour to go, that hour could take you 3 hours tomorrow by the time you get
Right.
back into it.
Yeah.
So so I appreciate when people do put in the extra time and get it done with, because in turn, it's probably saving us time the next day.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So that's
All right.
kind of the administrator area.
Okay. Who would like to go next?
Who would like to go next? Carl's up.
Okay, Carl?
So in our office, we've got comp time. The support staff, typically we would approve that ahead of time. They'll come to me and say, is it okay if I work through lunch today because I need to leave an hour early or something the next day? But typically for when they're accruing comp, it's because we've got just a backup of work that they need to get done. We only have, other than our victim assistance area, we've got 2 support staff for the 8 attorneys. So it's not unusual for them to have an extra hour or 2 here or there. But I think last year, at the end of the year, we only had a total of about 20 hours between our 3 support staff that can earn comp time. They get paid out as non-exempt. They get paid out at the end of the year. And like I said, it was about 20 hours total for the 3 of them. For the exempt employees, which are the attorneys, we don't get paid out, or the assistants don't get paid out. They earn comp time, and it just rolls over from year to year with a maximum of 40 hours that they can accrue. Typically, that happens when they've got to work over a weekend or stay late because of what's coming up on the calendar. We do our best to try to plan ahead and have that all figured out, but sometimes you'll just, what case you think is going to go for trial the next Monday doesn't happen, and it's the 3rd one down the list that's going to happen. So you have to work over the weekend to get prepared. So for the attorneys, that's some of the comp time that'll accrue. The other a more typical area that we used to have for comp time was our on-call duties. So we have to have an attorney on call 24/7. Under Phil, how he usually did that is he would be on call during the week, and then an assistant would get every weekend. How we pay it out is if you're on call in the evening, you earn 2 hours of comp. If it's a weekend, Friday 4:30 to Monday 8 a.m., you get 8 hours of comp. And any vacation day, or excuse me, holiday, you would get 4 hours of comp for a full day holiday. So the assistants were accruing quite a bit more comp under the old way of somebody working every weekend. Because we've been short-staffed pretty much the whole time during my tenure, I've pretty much handled on-call the whole time other than maybe 5 or 6 weekends and when I was gone on vacation for a couple of weeks. So, and I obviously don't accrue comp time. So I think right now our attorneys are a little under 100 hours for the 7 assistants. And again, it's just something that they don't get paid out for. It's just that they can use that in lieu of PTO or vacation time. So, any questions about?
Carl, from your guys' standpoint, do you guys have to come in, or is it just calls that you have to take on the comp time on the
Typically
weekends?
when we're on call, it's usually, I always take my laptop home, at least on weekends. So we wouldn't necessarily have to come in. Usually it's just taking calls from law enforcement because there are certain timelines that we have to get approval for 48-hour paperwork, things like that. Or if there's a search warrant. In the last couple of days, I've approved like 7 search warrants in a case out of Sauk Rapids. So
okay,
those are coming in during the evenings lots of times.
Mr. Chair, Carl, I know you've got a lot of experience and years here. Would it be fair to say that during your time in Benton County that the exempt employees have received comp time?
Yes, this has been the same
The whole time
policy
you've
the
been
whole time I've been here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's going back at least 25 years. So.
okay.
Okay.
Anybody else?
All right.
Thanks, Carl.
You bet.
Thank you.
Sandy.
So the majority of our positions are non-exempt. For non-exempt staff, they're in time and a half if they did overtime. So most of them they always have to be pre-approved for overtime. Most of them are expected to flex their time within the week. They work extra on Monday, they take it back on a different day during the week, so they don't actually earn overtime. For our financial workers, however, we have a grant that pays for overtime, would have paid for new positions. We had asked for 2, we got 1. And it pays for our overtime, it paid for 3 temp workers. So last July, we received $293,000 for this. Of that, we have spent about $80,000. So now we are still trying to hire for the position that was approved in January. That will come out of this money ongoing. Our temps are almost done, but the overtime is planned ahead of time, it is requested, and is voluntary, and it comes out of the grant money. For the social workers and the supervisors who are exempt, they do not need prior approval to work overtime. They earn hour for hour, and it's all comp time, not paid out, not time and a half. Just if you work an extra hour, you get an hour of comp. And that is because they're out in the field or whatever's happening, we can't see ahead of time. They are considered exempt employees because they have ability to decide if they need to work over. They can earn up to, for social workers, they can earn up to 50 hours of comp. And for supervisors, they can earn up to 40. And I would agree with Carl. It has been that way since I started here 35 years ago. So, any questions?
Anybody?
One, Sandy, how many exempt employees? Any idea?
I don't know the exact number, but it would be all of the social workers and then the supervisors.
That half the department, so about 40.
About there, somewhere in there.
So about 40 people in that department are exempt.
Yep.
So you got a grant that pays the overtime?
For the financial workers.
Okay.
Yep. So.
That was a special grant for what they're calling the unwinding of medical
Right.
assistance eligibility, because all that was kind of put on hold during the pandemic. So we got, you said how much? 200?
We got 293,708, and we're down to 218.
And how long will that last?
There is no end date. We can use it till it's gone.
Okay. But when it's gone, it's gone.
Correct.
Okay,
Any other questions?
Thank you, Sandy.
thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
So for public health, very similar to what we've heard from the others. Typically, we follow the OT comp time policy according to our union contract. For our staff in public health, there's a lot of times they're working evenings and weekends, just given the nature of like city council meetings or events or things that are happening in the community partner meetings, those kinds of things. So at times, employees may encounter work-driven situations where they would be over those 40 hours. And in those cases, we ask that staff do reach out to their supervisor for prior approval of those times. In situations where they're in an encounter maybe with a client, they're on a home visit, they're out in the field with a community partner engagement, and something runs over, we ask that they reach out as soon as reasonably possible following that. And like Sandy said, oftentimes we'll work with staff to try to find ways that they can stay within that 40 hours, but it's just not always possible. Sometimes they already have home visits lined up the rest of the week that they can't cancel, or situations that, or responsibilities they've already adhered to. So that's essentially it for us. Any questions on that as well?
Jacqueline, how many of your staff are exempt?
Oh gosh, I think probably 10. All but our case aides. Yeah.
Everyone else would be exempt.
Yeah, so probably 10.
10,
Yep.
thank you.
Except the case aide, yeah.
Yep. And then we do have a couple, the staff vacancies too, so for coverage of those needs as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So our overtime comp is always approved before it happens. The employee will ask and then state what needs to be completed. Any tasks are usually statutory duties, whether it be elections, tax calc, preparing tax statements, or just day-to-day tasks due to being short-staffed right now. So we try to keep it as under control as possible.
And Mr. Chair, Christine, how many exempt?
2.
2, thank you.
And how short-staffed are you? How many?
2.
2 positions? Well, that's not good odds.
Any other questions?
Anybody else? No. Good. Thank you.
For land services, we don't accrue a lot of overtime or comp time. In the planning and zoning office, it might be myself or Karen who accrues comp time for meetings. We have, I have sometimes 3 night meetings per month, and Karen attends all of those on top of attending the Solid Waste Advisory Committee meetings. So that's really the only time that we accrue comp time, is those evening meetings, and then Amnesty Day, which is a full 8 to 9 hours that each staff person accrues time. It's generally, they do use it, maybe not during the same week. It just really depends. With the amount of staff that we have, it's not always feasible to use up that time in the same week. There's still the duties that need to be done that week. And the assessor's office, they have reporting periods. They have times when they're extremely busy and there's statutory duties that need to be completed. Right now, they're working on a bunch of reporting that needs to be done. It is what it is, and we have to get the job done. But other than that, it's not something that happens all the time throughout the entire year. It's very minimal when it does happen. And then the recorder's office very, very rarely has comp time or overtime. Maybe at the very end of the year when we have a lot of documents that are coming in that need to be recorded by December 31st. But other than that, I don't think that we accrue much comp time. It's generally approved, or it's something that we already know that it's going to need additional time just due to timing and deadlines.
Mr. Chair, Roxanne, any exempt employees?
I think it's about half, so about 7.
Okay, thank you.
How many short are you?
We are not short right now, and we actually just hired another appraiser for the assessor's office.
If we don't mind, I would like to just go back and just ask how many were short in the other divisions that already spoke. So Sandy, On all your departments, how many short would you say?
We are 5 short, but we've just hired all of them, so if they all come in, we will be fully staffed.
Okay. And how long were those vacant, would you say?
A couple months.
Okay. Anybody else that was short?
Yeah, we're short down one, and then that new supervisor position as well, so 2.
So 2. We'll find out from Carl another time. Okay, Steve.
Good morning.
Morning.
In IT, we have 6 of us. I'm an exempt employee, the rest are non-exempt. Just due to the nature of our work, we do after-hours work, and to avoid disruption, so a couple of the staff will do updates and downtime. So we do have some overtime and comp time. It's all approved by me. It's kind of a mix. I kind of allow them to choose either the overtime or comp. Any comp time that is accrued is used by the end of the year typically. So we have a modest overtime budget, and we usually stay under it. And we are not short-staffed at the moment.
Carl has one attorney who's deployed right now.
Okay.
He's hiring a 10th person to help cover paralegal, like 40 hours a week, but he's down to one
All right.
deployed attorney.
Thanks, Monty. And any questions for?
Thanks, Steve.
Yep, and we
Thanks,
also
Steve.
have emergency times where we have to jump up and do something that's unexpected as well, so.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Monty, you're just short 1, right?
Where?
In HR.
HR.
That's true, yeah, yeah. Sure.
I'm just trying to add all those short.
Yes, yep, that's what I'm doing too.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So with a relatively small staff compared to a lot of these departments, we got 5 staff in our department. We have been down 1 for the last 3 months or so. Most of our overtime comes in as far as emergency call-ins. Snow removal, sprinkler heads getting busted, toilets overflowing, that kind of stuff. I let my guys more or less discretionary. If they get called and they need to go in for something, they gotta go in and do it, you know. I'm not gonna have them call me on an emergency and say, hey, there's a sprinkler head busted, can I go into work? It's gotta be done. As far as plumbing, snow removal. Snow removal has been a big one. This year, of course, not so much. But in most years, that is the big one. They are able to, per their contract, it's 8 hours a day, over 8 hours a day worked, or 40 hours a week. So if they call on the weekend, they gotta get that 40 hours in for the week before they get overtime on the week. As far as the 8 hour day, a lot of times if they come in at 4 o'clock in the morning, by noon they're ready to go home, so they're gonna flex out for the rest of the day, as long as we got staffing to cover what needs to get done.
Mr. Chair, Jeff, I assume no exempt employees in your department?
Except me.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sheriff Heck and I were back there arm wrestling, so we're gonna save the best for last. So yeah, my department probably works one of the most overtimes, and we'll address the maintenance side right now, and they're covered by the International Union of Operator Engineers, Local 49. So that covers 14 positions. So their contract is pretty explicit on overtime. There's actually a seniority list that we have to follow, meaning a maintenance superintendent is supposed to follow that list when it comes time for calling in for overtime. Most of their overtime comes during snow removal times. We've worked really hard. Maintenance superintendent has worked really hard to try to get the plow routes to the point where a snow event of, let's say, 4 inches or less should be able to be cleared, the driving lanes cleared within 8 to 9 hours. So that's kind of how we're managing that. Now, if we get more snow than 4 inches in a snowfall event, it's going to take us more time to clear those lanes and push back those lanes. The union contract says that during their normal work schedule, which is 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, they get overtime after 8 hours per day. So if we call them in during the winter and they're out plowing after 8 hours, they're automatically starting to accrue at time and a half, earn overtime at time and a half. The union contract, as written, also allows them to earn comp time and bank up to 150 hours. So that's 150 hours at time and a half. So they really only have to work 100 hours of overtime to bank up to 150 hours. In the summer, the contract allows for an altered work schedule, and we usually do it like on a vote, but every year since I've been here for 12 years, the vote has been, in the summer, they prefer to work 4 9s and a 4-hour Friday. Then in that schedule, the union contract says that they don't start earning overtime until after 40 hours. The union contract also says that if there is a need for overtime, and the newest iteration says, and the supervisors provide less than 60 hours notice, they're also eligible for shift differential outside of their normal work hours. So in the summertime, sometimes we want to work 10-hour days because we can get more accomplished in a 10-hour day than an 8-hour, 9-hour day. Sometimes if we're working alongside contractors as well. So we work really hard to plan that ahead. The maintenance superintendent, I know, works really hard to plan that ahead and provide that notice in advance so the county's not having to pay shift differential. They get that shift differential because a lot of times snow events, we don't know that it's going to snow 60 hours in advance. So they get shift differential when they get called in at 4 in the morning because that's 3 hours before their normal shift start time. I'll go ahead and address the supervisor. So the maintenance superintendent is an exempt employee. Per the personnel policy, able to earn up to 80 hours of comp time, and that's 1 for 1. So you work 1 hour over 40, and you don't start earning comp time until you've worked more than 40 hours that week. And I believe if you take sick leave or vacation or PTO, that doesn't count as work time. So you don't get to use your PTO to count towards your 40. Say you were sick Monday and Tuesday, but then you put in long hours the rest of the week. But that being said, the maintenance superintendent earns comp time through the winter because although the plow operators may get called in 4 in the morning, he's out before that driving the roads to check the condition. And most of the time he's staying around that shift to make sure all the drivers get back in and safe at the end of the shift. So he's earning comp time on those days that they're out plowing. The other group of employees in our department that earns overtime is our engineering technicians. They're not covered by a bargaining unit, so it defaults back to just the personnel policy. So they earn overtime after 40 hours a week. And it's an expectation that we have of that position that during the construction season that they're going to work overtime. We pay our contractors based on quantities that we measure and test. A lot of materials that are incorporated in construction projects have testing procedures, test results, and reports. And so if there's a failing test on some kind of material, even though they incorporate it in the project, sometimes the spec allows it to remain in the project but at a reduced price. So it's really important for our engineering technicians to be out there measuring that quantity. And so that means that sometimes they're out there as long as the contractor's working 16 hours a week. Although in our bidding specs, we put in their requirements that the contractor needs to tell us at least 24 hours in advance if they plan on working a Saturday. And at the pre-construction meeting, we established what the contractor's normal working hours are. Are they plan on only working 5 hours or 5 days a week but put in 12, 13-hour days? Or are they going to work 5 10s and then work Saturdays as well? So that our engineering technicians know before that project starts what's going to be kind of expected of them and what they'll be expected to work. Now, I said that they're out there generally the whole time the contractor is. That's true to most extent, but sometimes we'll look at it and say, is this work that the contractor's doing now, is it going to cover up something that we won't be able to measure or inspect later? If not, then we can allow our technicians to go home, and then the next morning when they get back in, go out there and measure the previous day's work. So there are times that the contractor may be working that our technicians are not out there working. There's 2 other exempt employees in our department, and that would be myself and the assistant engineer. And so we do work comp time. I say it a lot of times in the construction world, I feel like we have two budgets. We have a monetary budget and we have a time budget, because you get a limited amount of time to do construction, and that does require us sometimes to put additional hours in. There may be an engineering question that comes up. Something happens on the project that's unexpected. The contractor's excavating and we hit something underground that we didn't know about, and inevitably that comes in at the end of the day, and the contractor needs to know now, because they've got thousands of dollars of iron sitting there. And it's not making them any money if they're not moving dirt, so they need decisions. And so the assistant engineer may need to work additional hours. Even myself, if it comes time to reviewing plans, we push every winter to try to get plans out as early as we can to get the bidding season, get them advertised, let contracts signed, so we're ready to hit the ground as soon as spring load restrictions come off. Now, that's not going to happen this year because spring load restrictions are incredibly early this year. But that requires sometimes late hours reviewing plans. As the county highway engineer, my professional reputation, my signature shows up on those plans. So I don't want to put out something that's inferior or that compromises public safety by some kind of design that we did. So sometimes we're up against those deadlines. In the comp time world, for us, a big portion of our funding comes from this state aid allotment that we get every year that comes directly from the HUTDF that has gas tax and various other funding streams. So I believe it's in the county's best interest for even our exempt employees to track those hours. When we're having to, whether it's snow plowing, half of our mileage of roads are state aid roads. So if my maintenance superintendent is working additional hours checking roads during snow events, I want him to track that as additional hours so we can show that against our state aid maintenance allotment and make sure we're maximizing our state aid allotment that we get every year. Likewise with my assistant engineer. If he's working on a construction project, I want to make sure that those costs are tracked to that state aid construction project. So the exempt employees in our office, we're banking comp time, but it's 1-to-1. So I mean, there's weeks that the exempt employees are putting 50 hours a week in. But in that comp time system, because we tracked it 1 week, we know that there may be a week later when things are slower that those exempt employees may take off early. And since we've tracked it, we know that that we're still giving the public, the county taxpayers, at least 40 hours a week every week of our time, unless we use our own earned PTO. So.
Commissioner Johnson?
Mr. Chair, Chris, just to clarify, 3 exempt employees then?
Correct.
Yourself, the assistant, and the superintendent?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And how many short are you currently?
With approved FTEs or what we would like to have?
With approved FTEs.
So right now we have one vacancy still that we are really
Engineering tech, right?
We're, it is, yeah. we cannot
Have we
fill
ever
that.
been full in the last 5-6 years now?
We have for there was a 2-year span that we were, and it is incredible that second year how much more productive you are when you have a full crew that has 1 year of experience working together under their belt. That year we were able to get our projects out early and everything, but every year other than that 2-year span in my 12 years here, it seems like we've had at least one vacancy in there. And yeah, it's a struggle.
Anybody else got questions? Thanks, Chris.
Good morning again, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So our office is unique in the 24/7 public safety services that we provide. There's 2 distinct reasons why our office encounters overtime. The first and most obvious is when we have an urgent public safety need or an emergency happening. None of us are going to advocate that when the deputy's shift ends, they're going to leave that accident scene when there's people lying there that need help. So that's fairly obvious. Some perhaps less obvious reasons why we might have unscheduled overtime would be we have urgent timelines to meet. For example, when we arrest people and bring them into custody, we have to ensure the paperwork gets to the county attorney's office in a timely manner. So there may be some time after deputy's shift they have to spend assembling that paperwork, making sure the report is ready. We could have an investigation that's ongoing with leads that need to be chased down that we have to take care of right now. And it isn't going to be able to be put off because things are going to change in the landscape. And if we're not doing this right now, we're going to lose that. You talk about drug investigations. Those frequently consume a lot of overtime because, again, it's just the timeliness of the investigation is critical, and, dope gets sold at all hours of the day. In these unplanned instances where overtime is required, all of our employees are mandated to put onto their time card either the person that approved their overtime or the case they were working on, so that the time card reviewer that looks at it every 2 weeks can see that there is somebody that gave authorization for that time to be worked. We also have quite a bit of pre-planned overtime. So we have a lot of pre-planned overtime that is there to cover open shifts. Specifically in the jail, the lion's share of overtime in the jail is covering the posts that are open because we have open positions. We're mandated by the Department of Corrections to have a certain number of employees on at any given time. If we don't have somebody on that line in the schedule, somebody has to jump in from another line to work that. So that just has to be covered, and that takes care of a lot of the jail's overtime. In the jail, you're also going to have overtime because employees are working a shift on a holiday. They could be going on a prisoner transport that's going to take them a fair distance in Minnesota, working more than their 8 hours. We have responsibilities for the court security. We do have some presence from our jail staff at community outreach events. We need to maintain training levels. When we're staffing our jail and constructing schedules, our main consideration is, again, making sure that we have proper coverage. And when you add on top of that the responsibility to train folks, it gets difficult to do that all without any overtime. So oftentimes when we have mandatory training, those folks are going to be in here on overtime. There will be some overtime that's accounted for by meetings to make sure that we're all on the same page and have the right plan going forward. Again, some minor overtime and perhaps recruitment events or occasionally court testimony for our jail staff. On our non-jail employees, again, covering shifts is a lot of the overtime, working shifts on a holiday. Sometimes we're going to have extra coverage out there from a law enforcement perspective because there's a perceived need. There could be expected turmoil in community. There could be an upcoming event. We're going to need extra coverage out there, so that's going to eat up some of our overtime budget. Also, prisoner transports, our licensed staff are going to assist in that sometimes. Court security responsibilities, we share that with the jail. Benton County Fair security, that eats up a lot of overtime in the summer. Community outreach events take up quite a bit of our time as well. We do a fair amount of grant-funded enforcement efforts. So we have Towards Zero Death initiatives where we have deputies out there working the road. We also have grants that pay for water patrol, snowmobile patrol, and ATV patrol. We have a lesser amount of contracted law enforcement services. So occasionally, for example, the Granite City Speedway will ask if we could supply a couple deputies because they have a large event, and we'll do those things throughout the year. Just like with the jail, we have training. We have court testimony. Our deputies have to appear in court when court is open, and if you have a deputy who's working overnight perhaps and they've arrested that suspect on DWI, well, that court is going to come due during the time that they're supposed to be sleeping or off duty. So that means we're going to have to pay that deputy overtime. Our per Pell laws and other employment laws, we have to offer overtime to our canine officer to account for his work taking care of the dog. Again, we have meetings that we have on a regular basis, and we also have our staff at recruitment events when we're trying to get the next generation of folks to come in and work for us. That's kind of the brief overview of what our overtime looks like.
Sheriff, and how many exempt employees?
I believe I have 6. I will say that only one of those is not covered by a union contract, so their overtime rules fall back on the contract provisions.
Right, generally in law enforcement, those folks receive overtime if they work in excess of their regularly scheduled shift.
Okay, Mr. Chair. So Sheriff, years ago, we used to have the Benton County Ag Society come in and they would ask for a donation and in turn they hired you. Do they still make the donation to your, the sheriff's department for coverage?
No, so what happened was, I think this was about 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. So, as you said, it used to be the Ag Society would come in, ask the county board for a donation. They'd take that donation, we'd work the security, and the Ag Society would give us the money that came from the board. So we changed that arrangement where that donation no longer is given to the Ag Society, and that money is simply in my budget as money to pay for this fair security. So we kind of cut out a step there.
Okay. I remember when we did that, and it's like it was a better way to work, but.
And would it be fair to say, is that about 15,000?
Yes, that's very near.
Okay.
How many short staff are you with all your divisions?
We are recruiting for the single open position that was approved as a new position in dispatch right now. We are recruiting for one deputy position. We have another offer out to a deputy candidate who is completing school this summer. And then in the jail, I believe we have 3 or 4 positions that we're recruiting for at the moment. So 6, 7.
7?
6 or 7, yeah.
Combined with everything? Yep, okay.
Yep.
All right, any other questions for Sheriff? Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else left? All right, I don't know for the rest of the board, this was extremely helpful for me.
It was, and Mr. Chair, if I could, I just, from my perspective, I want to make sure department heads understand, and I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but I don't think the intent was to say there should never be any overtime. We certainly understand that.
No.
I think it was really good to get informed about how this works. For me, I take seriously my fiduciary responsibility as a commissioner, and this is one of them. And so for me to understand how those dollars are being spent is really helpful. So thank you, I appreciate that.
And the accountability.
Yes.
It seemed like before we had no accountability as how this comp time and overtime was going out the door. And I think I gotta have accountability to the taxpayers.
Yeah. It's good to see, I mean, not good to see, but every department has their own intricacies to like why it's needed. And until now, we don't live in your guys' department. We hover is what I'll say.
Yeah.
And it's good to get that close, in-depth look a little bit on what qualifies for overtime, because we're not privy to that.
Right.
Yep, just a better understanding to help us understand why all of this overtime is happening.
Monty, great job setting this up. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I wanted to add is, so at a recent management team meeting, we're talking about the reporting. You may remember we gave you this like
hundreds of pages.
A ream of report, yeah.
So Benton made the mistake of volunteering to help with the summer. I see Brenton's with us.
Yeah.
He volunteered to assist us creating a summer report out of the payment system. So I know he's in discussions with Jackie about creating some kind of nice, useful summary report. I can't tell you exactly when that's going to occur, but he's exploring that with Jackie. So we don't have to give you this.
Yeah. Save a few trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
300 pages.
And Mr. Chair, then thank you, Monty, for doing that, because I look at that the same way I look at the auditor warrants that come out, right? I can review those, and if I have questions, I can ask a specific question.
Yeah.
It would be the same thing with that report. I think it would just allow us to be able to review it from a high level and ask a question if there's one.
Yep, I agree.
You look at how everything goes all the way through a process. You know, it starts potentially with the sheriff's department arresting somebody, then it goes to the attorney's office that got to deal with it on a weekend, then it could go to social services that have to deal with it on a weekend. So it's a snowball effect that you don't take into consideration when we don't live it in your guys' position. So very eye-opening, and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, Monty.
Is the flag item next?
I think
Sure.
so, yes.
So it was a consensus of the board at your last meeting to bring this resolution to you all. And essentially, the resolution that you have in the packet it's identical to the one that was adopted and provided to us by Crow Wing County. So we made no changes to it. It's consistent with what they adopted up in Crow Wing County. I just want to add to, just a reminder, is there was some discussion about cost to make this transition, and as Sheriff Heck noted, to transition to the new seal, it would cost approximately $50,000, and it's because the seal appears on vehicles and badges and so on. And we noted too that we'd have to replace seven flags. Since then, we've gotten a cost from Jeff. It's about $100 per flag is that cost. So the resolution is there for your consideration.
And I think we had some good dialogue on this the last meeting, and I think we held it over for Commissioner Johnson to be able to share.
Thank you. I mean, with that, I'm in agreement with your whole discussion. I think I shared that before I left, and I appreciate you holding off so we could have a full board vote on this. So.
Mr. Chair, I saw one addition that wasn't in the other one, in the proposed one for today.
Okay, which one is that?
It's the, now therefore be it resolved type thing. Let's see. It says, the first one says, the county commissioners does thereby supports and agrees to the state subdivision agreement, and that's poor wording, and it wasn't in the other proposal.
Monty?
I'm going to claim ignorance on this one. I'm sorry. I do not recall the exact wording of the Crow Wing County resolution.
So yeah, that's an extra than what was in the Crow Wing County one.
Sure.
So how would you propose it read?
Okay, so I would skip the now therefore and go with the therefore be it resolved with the second one with Benton County hereby urges our legislator delegation and the governor, et cetera.
So we would scratch the first now therefore?
Right.
Okay, just scratch it, okay.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Schlangen, are you saying that then that would match the Crow Wing County resolution? Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to move for approval of the resolution and with the understanding that it matches
Crow Wing County.
Crow Wing County.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second with the noted change to make sure it matches the Crow Wing County resolution.
Got it.
Any other dialogue? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. So I believe the next one is the ARPA agreement, ARPA resolution. So the board previously discussed the allocation of ARPA resources at a committee of the whole on January the 8th and heard proposals that were brought to you all by Amanda, the Benton Economic Partnership Executive Director. I believe Amanda is with us online to help us if there are any questions. I was going to just very briefly, if I could, Mr. Chair, go through the project, just so that's kind of in the record for us, if you give me just a second here. All righty. I'm going to quickly go through the projects. Okay, so the first one was proposed by the city of Foley it provided incentives similar to what the board agreed to with the city of Sauk Rapids to encourage the development of residential lots. A couple of possible locations would be the north up by the high school and church, and then to the south off County Road. Is that 50?
51.
51, excuse me. I believe there's obviously there are currently homes there now, and this would essentially be an expansion of that subdivision to the south. So again, the concept would be similar to the city of Sauk Rapids agreement to provide incentives to developers to help cover the cost of water and sewer infrastructure to new residential lots. And in that instance, the board agreed to support the city of Foley in the amount of $500,000 of ARPA funds. Secondly, the city of Gilman, of course, we know they need to replace their municipal wastewater treatment system, and they're pursuing federal grants and state bonding to help with that cost. And the board in that instance agreed to support that project in the amount of $400,000. And that includes a previous commitment of $176,000 in ARPA funds. Next, the city of St. Cloud proposed to do some renovations, improvements to some existing apartment complexes that provide housing to low-income individuals. And in this instance, the board agreed to support that in the amount of $100,000 for those apartment complex improvements. Things such as, I believe, was heating, cooling, were the primary planned improvements. I'm going to skip over Sauk Rapids and come back. In the city of Sartell, the board agreed to support this project by $450,000, and this is to bring water and sewer infrastructure to the former paper mill site. I believe the city of Sartell is now referring to that as the mill district. That is the current term that they are using for it. So this would help the city bring water and sewer infrastructure to that site to help encourage residential and commercial development at that location. And then last, the city of Rice, $300,000 for a new city well to help increase their capacity and help provide additional water supply for new residential commercial growth in the city of Rice. Again, $300,000. City of Sauk Rapids is not present in this resolution. I just want to stress, as I know that discussions continue with the city of Sauk Rapids about possible uses of ARPA funds, residential, other possible investments to encourage development and growth in Sauk Rapids. So again, not forgotten, those discussions continue. So, Mr. Chair, I thought it'd be useful, for BEP's purposes and our city's purposes to see this resolution, to see that the commitment has been made to provide these resources. The next step after this will be actual contract agreements with each city, and I am working on those right now. So in the next couple, 3 months, we'll get those contracts to you, and then that creates that formal obligation of the resources for those cities.
Yes. And
this gets us started.
Yep. From the city of Sauk Rapids standpoint, I know Commissioner Heinen and myself were working with the city of Sauk Rapids to figure out what is the best route for some additional, if needed, funds. So, but I do think that getting this out there sooner rather than later to these other cities would be the way to go. We have a lot of good projects that are going to completely, I'm going to say, hopefully put Benton County a little bit further ahead. I commend the board by taking the stance that we weren't going to put it in our general fund and use it for lost income revenue. We're investing within our county, so.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, maybe just for clarification, it's not that Sauk Rapids has received dollars already, and the discussions going forward about maybe some additional ones.
Correct. Yep. And how this got spurred is the Sauk Rapids actually received funds last year on this. So
right. The board previously committed $350,000 of ARPA funds to residential development in Sauk Rapids. Yep, that's already there.
And by spending this 1.75 on these allocated projects, it's reinvesting in our county, and it's, as we call it, the gift that'll keep giving with taxes coming in after infrastructure is built.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just one last thing. I want to definitely acknowledge Amanda's efforts to connect with all of our communities and to identify projects that were eligible for ARPA funds and bring those to you for consideration. We greatly appreciate her efforts to facilitate this process.
Absolutely. It goes unsaid. Thank you, Amanda, for everything. You're everywhere in this county.
With that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to move for approval of a resolution committing our ARPA funds to Benton County cities as was presented.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other thoughts? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
All right.
Thank you again, Amanda.
Yep.
You're welcome, thank you.
And for the record, Monty, if any of these projects fall through, we can reallocate this money.
Absolutely right. That's a good point, right? If somehow that things change and the city cannot deliver it by the end of 26, the board could reallocate those resources to another eligible project. Absolutely, yep.
Yep, good point.
Yep, thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
All righty. Moving on to the credit card issue. So, Mr. Chair, at present, several departments have been authorized to hold and use county-issued credit cards. The Administrator's Office, the Sheriff's Office, the Highway Department, Human Services. With the separation of public health from human services, public health has requested to have its own credit card. And of course, as you know, I'm sure in your own personal lives, a lot of buying now happens online, and that's the reality. So a lot of purchases do occur online. You often make your travel arrangements online, and of course need a credit card to make those things happen. So public health has told me that they do have a substantial need for their own credit card, and this policy revision then would allow that. So the change. This is what you have here. Your document is the fiscal policies is kind of it's a place where basically all things fiscal have sort of landed over the years in one comprehensive policy. So you see lots of things in here. It included the credit card policies, and those things start on looks like page 6, and you can see the revisions. So if I'll just quickly cover those. It used to be we had a section for each department, and it made more sense just to consolidate it into one section to cover all departments. And so you'll see that on page, it starts on page 7 at the bottom. And so basically you see it lists then Highway Department, Human Services, Public Health, and Sheriff's Office. And essentially then every department would follow the same process, the same internal controls, the same documentation. And I think this process has worked well over the years. And there's good internal controls, there's good check and balances. One of the important things it's really we need to stress is that separation of duties. And that's set forth in these policies. So basically, the person who does the ordering isn't the same person that processes the bill. You've got to have those two separate. Mm-hmm. So I think that's been useful over the years. So those are the revisions that we're asking for your approval for, Mr. Chair.
I'll make a motion to approve the revised Benton County fiscal policy effective March 6, 2024.
Go ahead, Commissioner Schlangen.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other dialogue? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
All right, I believe the next thing is the administrator's report. I'll be very brief. Update on employee engagement. So the management team had a recent discussion with Andy Zimney from Employee Strategies and made the choice to focus on essentially four major areas. The first is going to be training for all of our department heads and supervisors, and we want that to be facilitated by Andy. So a group of folks and I are going to talk to Andy here quite soon to try and narrow that down exactly what's that training going to look like, how often is it going to occur, what's it going to cost, stuff like that. So we'll be bringing that back to you all soon. The second thing is what Andy calls a culture team, and that's a team that focuses on those things that help, maybe improve morale, maybe social type activities. You may remember one thing Andy talked about was having department open houses. So things of that nature help sort of create better connections between us, more communication. So Andy will help facilitate this culture team. The third item would be the remote work policy. There's obviously a lot of concern about the remote work policy, so we're going to look at that one. The fourth thing is employee benefits. As you may remember from Andy's survey results, that was the number one issue that people identified having concerns with. So Jackie has is she still here? Jackie has volunteered. Just as FYI, so Jackie is chair of our benefits advisory committee, and we already have a committee again that looks at benefits. So it makes sense for that group to tackle this issue. So we're going to bring in the help from our broker, Marsh McLennan. But I've asked Jackie to tap into the BAC as the group, the forum, to address this issue of benefits. So at some point, it's very likely that the BAC is going to have some recommendations for you all on benefits. But again, that was the number one issue that we saw in the survey. So trying to be responsive to what the survey told us that people's concerns were. Yep. So that's the employee engagement issue. Government Center employee meeting survey results. So you asked me to do a survey of employees after that half-day session. And you see some of the summary survey results in your packet. I guess I can reach a couple conclusions from the survey. I'll just wait.
We'll just reconvene and go back.
A couple conclusions from the survey. I think for those that attended, I think they felt it was useful. They felt that they were heard, but they thought the sessions were too short. So that was kind of my conclusion, what I can glean from this. And I think most people who responded to the survey said they'd like to see more. They'd like to see more sessions. So that's kind of my takeaway. More sessions and give more time. But I think overall the satisfaction level with the meetings was good. It was good.
I agree. I think it was too short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were
Hindsight's
rushed.
2020. Yeah.
That was kind of rushed.
Yeah.
The last thing, Mr. Chair, if I may move on, then is so I have connected with legislative assistants for Senator Putnam and Representative Wolgamott to sponsor legislation for us to give us the exemption from state sales tax for construction materials for the government center project. So I've sent them draft language, and I've connected again with their legislative assistants. They have both told me that the senator and the representative will be in touch with me to discuss this further, and that was about a week ago. So again, I've made the initial connection. I don't know this year if there's going to be much less legislative appetite for bills like this. As you may recall, last year there was obviously a substantial appetite because many cities, counties, and school districts received the exemptions from the state sales tax. So again, I'm not really sure what the legislative attitude is this year. We'll find out. So, but at least we've got the process started.
Thank you for that.
And that,
Monty.
Mr. Chair, is all I have.
Okay. Has the board got anything for Monty? I got one comment. I thank you for stepping up and doing all this extra stuff. She is always behind the scenes. Jackie is unbelievable. So she doesn't get enough credit.
If you want something done, give it to Jackie.
Exactly.
There you go. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. I think with Commissioner Hyam brought this idea up about maybe taking the rest and moving it, and we'll do the ditch authority and move it that way.
Yep, so Mr. Chair, you need a motion to recess our county board
Yep.
meeting?
Yes.
Could we take a 2-minute break and then we'll
Sure.
get into ditch authority?
Yep. So we got a motion to recess.
Yep.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. 2-minute recess. Thank you.
It'll show up on the screen for the commissioners and stuff there, so.
I believe we had a roll call earlier, showed us all in attendance. I need a motion to approve or amend our agenda.
So move. Second.
Motion to approve our agenda is presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Move on to first item, approve or amend the meeting minutes of February 6th of 24. It's a consent agenda.
So move.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. All right, move on to Chris. Discussion of culvert location on CD 14 when you're ready.
Yeah, this came as a request from Mr. Tyler Marsh. He would like to address the Drainage Authority about some of the work that has occurred on Ditch 14. So at this point, I'll just kind of hand it over to him and let him speak.
Okay.
So.
And Tyler, if we could, just for the record, have you state your name and address for the record, please.
Tyler Marsh, 6601 50th Avenue North, Crystal, Minnesota.
Thank you.
So hopefully to keep this from jumping around too much, I'll try to just take it chronologically. So 1903 is the earliest stuff that I have. And some of this you guys saw last time. This is the supervisor's road order, establishing a road. And right here is where it maps out what we're talking about, sections 14 and 23, and there it shows said road. And I have a little bit of a hard time reading this, but where it's actually printed, it talks about establishing it henceforth as, they call it a highway, which highway can mean a lot of things, I guess. I have... So sorry, do I just close this and it'll take me back to that folder?
It should, yes.
Okay, so that's one item, 1903. Just want to make sure I open the right one here. Okay, so this is zoomed in. If you'd like to see the full map of this. This is also from 1903. This is an outline map of Benton County. And a lot of this stuff I got from, there's a map library at the U of M that has historic old plot maps, things of that nature. So right here is section 14, section 23. Again, it is showing this road where the supervisor's road order said it should be. See if I can, that's the one that's a little later. Well, but if you guys want, I'll put that up quick. So this is the one from 1903. Yep.
You're good.
This is the one from 1903. And I actually grabbed the legend off of this one, which again we're talking about over here, Maywood Township, and that double line that we saw, they are calling it a wagon road in 1903. I don't know, sorry, I don't know if you saw that wagon road there. So moving forward to 1916, I got a few things from that. I got a plot map from, again, this U of M map library, and that shows, Yes, this was 1903. The plot map was this guy. I apologize, I don't know how to rotate it on here.
Like rotate
well,
is way
and-
up top.
Right
there. There you go.
Is that it? Yep, okay. So again, the resolution will be a little bit fuzzy here, but I do have a zoomed in one. But again, there's 1423. There it shows a road. There we are. Between 14 and 23. Here is this same road. And then in 1916 is when County Ditch 14 was established. So in those establishment documents was the alignment. That's it. And here we have, consistent with everything else so far, sections 1423, and it shows the road. And on here, you'll also notice this is branch 3, and then this is the main trunk, and it's showing the same road. So 1903, 1916. So the earliest aerial photograph available that I can find is 1938. So at this point, I guess I should back up a little bit. What I'm hoping to show here is that there was indeed a road there. And we actually, I showed it last time, maybe I should back up a little bit. The original specs indicate that this is from the establishment of the ditch. Down here at the bottom, it talks about culverts shall be installed in accordance with state law at all roads. Yes, here, the necessary culverts or bridges at road crossings are to be constructed as provided by state law, et cetera, et cetera. That again is from 1916. So I'll move forward to the aerial photographs. I don't know if this is the one from, I've got a, oh, that's further north. So at this point, what I'm hoping to show is that the road's initial alignment, I don't think there's any reason to doubt that they got it right according to all these different documents. When I initially brought some of this up to Chris, he said he's looked at this supervisor's road order and he believes that this road exists north of the property line. So through some of these aerial photographs, I can begin to show that it actually did move, and I can pretty well pinpoint the date. So, is this thing out? I apologize, there's a flare there. Is that
It's off the way.
Yeah, it's
so
off the
here
way.
we can see the road does fall into less seldom use along here, and then over here it begins to be used where somebody crosses, and there's a larger section of this property to the north of branch 3. So this is what created all this usage that kind of veers to the north. And there's a little further evidence, I believe, of this road was still there, and then when it hits this, I apologize, it's a grainy old picture and I didn't anticipate the glare, but
Could you tell me what year was that taken?
this is 1938, so this is 23, I don't know if I got my math right there, 22 years, I believe, later than the ditch establishment. So a significant amount of time has gone past. I don't have an earlier aerial photo, and believe me, I have looked. But on this same website, the 39 isn't loading. There is another aerial photo 1 year later, which I couldn't get it to load, but this is in 50, I believe it's 53. And still some evidence of the road, but the usage down here for this little homestead had clearly kind of taken it over, and the path that sort of veered to the north, the path that veered to the north becomes much more established. And right at the property line, I mean, I still think it looks like remnants of a road that had fallen into disuse. The next aerial photo I have is in 83, and I apologize, I could not get these to format properly, but interestingly in 83, the usage of that road seems to have picked up a bit more, and what was happening to the north to kind of get it, to get access north of branch 3 there is not in very apparent use in 83. We're coming up to when I think the big change happened that resulted in the road that we see today. Oops. So this is 1999. And I don't know if we're going to get better than that. Well, at any rate, there is no apparent huge road right here. It's clearer on this, but I don't know what I can do about the glare.
Tyler, just for clarification, is that like in the northwest corner of section 23?
Northeast corner. No, sorry, it's sort of midway on the boundary between section 23 and section 14.
Okay.
But yes, it is at the boundary between the two, and it's kind of halfway in the middle of the block.
Okay.
So that was 1999, and then in 2000, the owner of the property to the north, Sam Montgomery, he's passed away since, he applied to have an exemption to build a road there. This speaks a little bit to the supervisor's road order. And he says in here that he wants to, that actually might be a little bit clearer look at the area as of 1999. I guess I don't know the exact date of this, but again, there's no really built up road there. He wanted to improve and widen an existing road and to leave a culvert at the original elevation. And he gets this exemption and he moves forward with construction, I believe around 2000 or maybe early 2001. And I have another aerial photo from 2001, which the work he did is pretty obvious, so hopefully this will show up. That is what happened after he worked on it here, is he dug ditches on both sides. One of them is very near the property line, the other is well on his property. He built up the road fully on his property. And another thing that kind of resulted, maybe we'll come back to a little later, is branch 3 actually ends up getting a little bit realigned by that. But at any rate, this is just to show that where the road originally was and this big built up thing that's there today are not one and the same. In 2000, he applied to do this work. In 2001, the aerial images show that it did indeed move. And then I guess that brings us to the modern day. So it still looks very much like this with the addition of a big culvert that does actually work. And I'm asking that, well, I guess my grandpa has to be the one to ask, but I expect him to ask to have the culvert placed on the property line, or have a culvert placed on the property line. And as I've said to Chris, I don't think that it's entirely necessary that you move the one that's there. that neighboring property did have access that they created privately to get to a larger section of the property that is north of Branch 3. And when Sam Montgomery built his road, he kind of just built a road sort of between two things that existed, and it did the job of both for him. So I understand if it's like, well, we don't want to move that, that's burdensome to the neighbor, and that's not in my interest at all. But getting access that was originally constructed for us to be able to cross the ditch to the western part of the property, placing a culvert on the property line would do that. So when I initially brought this up to Chris, he brought it before you guys and said, because there are no documents to support that, he recommends not doing that. And so here are these documents. Then it was about the location of the road. And I think, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else we want to get into now, but basically, that's me laying out, the road was there. There would have been a culvert placed under it according to the specs. The road has moved, and as of now, we are just kind of left in the lurch. And maybe I can get this to show up okay, but. So here's actually an image on the ground. To the right side is the built-up area on the property to the north, and then this is where we travel, and there's a culvert to the north of the property line. There's nothing to the south, and if a culvert was on the property line, I took some measurements out there, and I actually think, if I remember correctly, they're putting in 40-foot sections of culvert. So if it extended 20 feet onto his property, I think his road is still mostly usable, like 2/3 of it or so, and then 20 feet would be on our side. So just to, I guess, give a little bit of a perspective of what's happening on the ground there.
Tyler, just for clarification, when you talk about a culvert being installed on the property line, is that culvert in line with the current drainage ditch then? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So the property line is also the drainage ditch line?
Sorry, so I'm glad you asked, because we're gonna talk about another culvert later, I hope. The property to the north, the neighbor's property, this southern boundary is nearly perpendicular to the ditch. So placing it along the ditch would allow crossing on both sides of the property, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Traveling parallel to that property line, you're perpendicular to the ditch. So that's to answer that question. And then we can come back to it when we talk about the other culvert, because they're closer to parallel, and so the culvert makes less sense there. And I guess, is there anything else we want to ask about this?
Question.
So is this the road authority in this, and Chris or Michelle might notice, is this the township road authority? So a lot of things could have happened on a township road authority, because I've been there and done that. You can have it abandoned, you can, if it isn't maintained for, I think township law says if it isn't maintained for X number of years, you don't have to maintain it no more, you don't have to do anything to it. You know, there was a road up in my area that was done way back in the 40s. It was a township road, and there was field and there was trees removed. It went 1.5 miles one way and 1/2 mile north, and they didn't catch it until they sold the property that this was a township road, and the bank actually would not borrow the person money until we abandoned that road. You know, there was a lot of things that could happen. Abandonments should be recorded at the recorder's office, though.
I think there's one or two things here. The drainage authority, or maybe not the drainage authority, but it needs to be established. Does this road exist as a public road? And then if it does, then a road authority needs to step up and take ownership of it. And we've discussed that in the past about road crossings are a cost to that road authority. And if it doesn't exist as a public road, does it exist as a private field crossing? And I think that's what, as the ditch engineer, I would contend that it was a public, or was believed to be a private field crossing, and the culvert was replaced where it existed before the repair project. Landowners are allowed to put crossings in after requesting that of the Drainage Authority, and the Drainage Authority has an obligation to tell them the appropriate size culvert and elevation to put that culvert. If it's a new crossing, then those costs usually fall to that landowner requesting that field crossing. So I think maybe that's what we need to, I don't know if it's been clearly established that there should be a road that exists as a public road, and then a township needs to claim that. If it's just a private field crossing, then that's another set of questions, is does it exist in the wrong location, or is there an additional field crossing that needs to be installed?
Chris, to Commissioner Pop's point though, do we know when was the last time Maywood Township, or have they ever certified that road?
Yes. Yeah, so you're right. So I cannot find any documentation in recent years, and I say recent, maybe a couple of decades, where the township road allotment account was created, and each year the township has to certify to the county their mileage of roads. And there's even statute language that says that they have maintained it as an open public road for at least 9 months out of the year. So they're not claiming this is 85th for that entire length. They're claiming it for the first 40 west of County Road 9, but they haven't been claiming any additional length than that.
Another point is that if Mr. Montgomery went to build a private road, the township had no authority to let him build a private road next to a road that should have existed.
Yeah, I guess if there was a public road that existed, there'd be no need to build a private road.
Well, they would have told him to build up the township. He could have went after the township to build that road up, had that been a legal road at that time. If he had property there, and he did it himself according to he asked for permission to build a private road, but the township evidently didn't spend no monetary money on it.
Yeah, I was aware of this same application for wetland, and so that in 2000, that's an important note too. In 2000, they were applying for an exemption to put in a field crossing as a agricultural private field crossing, and then because of that, they met the requirements of a de minimis wetland impact. In that documentation, though, it notes that if it was a public road, it would need additional wetland. It would have additional wetland impacts and need to be mitigated. So I think the documentation here of 2000 from the LGU, which was at that time Nick Tomazik, that was Mark McNamara. So it's predecessor. So two predecessors from our current Sierra Cotter is noting in there and treating it as a private field crossing, and it noted that if it was a road at that time, additional wetland mitigation would have been required.
So Tyler, just for my own clarification, because I know this is kind of muddy, and I'm trying to keep track of this. Is the request that the drainage authority should be putting a culvert back, or is the request that you want to do that as a private landowner?
The request is that because there was one there originally, that as the repair took place, that there should be one placed on the property line.
But I think and that's where we get to, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's disagreement on whether there was one there before the repair.
Correct.
Because if I understood the repair report, there was not.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think there might be a little confusion. Was it there put in by the Drainage Authority, or was that a private one put in for the drainage?
Well, I agree with Mr. Marshes. There's some documentation from 1913. I found some of the same plat maps from 1914 that indicate that was a wagon road. I found the same notes and stuff that says that was a wagon road. But I found some plat maps from the 1930s and those same aerials. We actually had copies of those same aerials in our office. That by the 1930s, I don't see that in the aerials as being improved as a road. So I don't disagree that maybe in 1903 that there was a road existed. It's also entirely possible that even in 1903, they thought they were building a road on the section line. And today, with today's modern surveying methods, we found that road was actually built north of the section line. The question is, before we did our repair project, we went through the process of reestablishing the drainage records, where we, had our consultants survey that and locate the culverts. And so we found that crossing north of the section line, I say a section line, we didn't do a lot of extensive work in locating those. But where it existed, we replaced a culvert of appropriate size and at the correct elevation where there was a built-up field road. So, which happens to be north of kind of the intersection of the branch and the main trunk line.
But then Tyler, because it was replaced there and not on the section line, then you're saying there's no access then to the property?
There's access to part of the property, but where this becomes material for me is that I have this planting plan with the DNR for things on the west side, which is another thing hopefully we'll circle back to. So I was trying to get some clarification about this, and I guess I tried to clarify my position in email that I guess I feel if it's a repair to the original spec, then what was originally constructed is relevant. And Chris emailed me, I believe it was yesterday, showing in 1938, and he believes in that aerial. He's like, well, there's not a road there in 1938. So to me, what was originally constructed is relevant, and the fact that subsequent work has taken place and like things have been privately developed is all well and good, and you know, it's great that you guys replace that kind of stuff. But then my grandfather cleared out remnants of a concrete culvert at the property line after having petitioned to have the ditch cleared. And so if you guys find a crumbled culvert in a spot, then would you have put a new one in? And the fact that the timing wasn't to his benefit this time around, it just seems like there's a bunch of factors here that have kind of swirled around and made it so that, well, now we have this moat that crosses the property, and where we used to be able to walk across it on foot, suddenly this has become a real issue. So the road's legal status today, I've spoke with the township about this, because I started out wondering if it was reasonable to just apply for access to use it, and they did not find any petition for abandonment. They also sent over, he contacted a lawyer, I believe it was, at there's some township club, I don't remember what it's called.
Association of Minnesota Townships.
That sounds right. They sent over a kind of flow chart about is it a road, and I think where it fell on there as far as its legal status today is it was never abandoned, but if the township wanted to assert the easement that's laid out in the supervisor's road order, there is a defense that landowners could bring against that. Because it's arguably not been maintained for, I think it's 40 years. Now there's some things that have been done to maintain it, but I don't know in my reading of that statute, I've tried to parse it, if it's the road authority that has to be doing that maintenance in order to keep that current. But I guess I'm kind of trying to just speak past that and go, okay, I don't know if I can get this reestablished as a legal road today. And frankly, I'm not asking the county or the township to plow it or anything, but just that it was originally there. It made sense originally for accessing the property, and then the different ownerships over the years have used the property differently, and what was originally constructed makes sense for how we're trying to use it today. And if I'm just like missing something important, again, like I feel I've asked this a few times in email, if this all hinges upon the road's legal status today and what was originally constructed is not relevant, then some of the opposition to it hasn't made a ton of sense to me, like saying there was no original documentation and, you know, pulling up 1938 and saying, well, I don't see one there. Like, the original construction is relevant or it isn't.
Commissioner Pinsky.
Mr. Chair, we get this lucky opportunity to be this hierarchy called the ditch authority. And through other ditches, we've learned that, you know, we install a culvert wrong or don't install a culvert, and the township gets upset because they have to pay money to do this. You know, at the end of the day, this was never a county road. So the county wouldn't be on the hook for this, but the township would. So this, in my opinion, has to go back to the township because they're the ones that are gonna end up having to pay for that portion of the culvert.
Michelle or Chris, you got a comment on that at all?
Well, I say, so we're proceeding, and Michelle, help me on my statute reference, under 103E.715, which is the repair statute. And repair has language in there that we repair it back to the as constructed and subsequently improved condition, the SIC. And if you recall in the process of this ditch, and much like the others, we didn't know what that as constructed and subsequently improved condition was. Therefore, we went through the process of the reestablishment of drainage records. And if you recall, we had public hearings on that. We're statutorily required to notify the regulatory agencies, the DNR, the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and others about our plans for this ditch. And then we completed that process and then went into the repair phase. So I hear what Mr. Marsh is saying about, is the original construction relevant or not? Yes and no. It's relevant because we know that a ditch existed. It was established per the laws of the time as a county ditch, and under the repair statute, we should repair that back to as close to that original condition or subsequently improved condition. And that was the whole point of the process of that reestablishment of drainage records.
Mr. Chair.
We once again find ourselves in a peculiar spot because I see what Tyler dug up. I mean, you did a lot of digging on this, and I tend to agree with what you did and what you're showing. The problem is if the township didn't maintain that road and is not claiming it today, we don't have the authority to go ahead and just do something outside of our bounds as the drainage authority to go ahead and pay for something and then take and assess that to the rest of the drainage people. You know, the people being assessed. So we're in kind of a tough spot right here, in my opinion. Michelle, what's your?
I would agree you are in a tough position. And the issue too is the fact that the road authority is the township. And as Chris had already noted, they may have not constructed it to our modern day standards where we can map everything out and make sure it's in the appropriate spot. So we just don't know those things, and I think Chris already reiterated or spoke about the fact that there was evidence of a road that wasn't maintained that we did replace a culvert on. So that could be the township road. That was already done, that was already assessed back. But regarding reestablishment of a township road, putting that township road somewhere else, that's outside of the scope of what the drainage authority can do.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Schlangen.
So what, are you asking that, like, there was a culvert there at one time, and you would like to have your own personal one put in so you can cross the property?
I understand
Cross the
that
ditch?
if we want to put a culvert anywhere on our property, we can apply and pay for that. I'm in here contending that they placed this one as part of the repair to the north, and the property line, to quote Chris, he said it was sensible and prudent to put it there. And you have two parallel roads and historic documents indicating that both of these properties benefited from that. So I'm saying, given this information, it's sensible and prudent to put it on the property line, which is in keeping with these documents and still gives both landowners what they need out of this. He added later in our emails, one of the last things he had said that if we and the neighboring landowner would both sign an agreement to have it moved, then he would recommend moving it. And we're not on good terms with the neighbors, so that's not gonna happen, but it seems to me that if that's possible, like, you guys do have some discretion here. I don't know, again, if
I don't
that's-
think we have discretion.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. This is going in a complete circle here. I think we have to go back to the township road. Okay, this falls back on that township first. I think that's gotta get clarified before it should even come back to us.
I would probably agree with you.
Chris, I'm still trying to grasp here, and sorry because it's kind of muddy. If that if that culvert goes on the property line, let's just say hypothetically, we're gonna do that, is that property line in the drainage ditch?
Let me bring up something that may help.
Having a hard time grasping.
I'm glad I'm not the only one,
You know,
thank you.
I mean, we go back to, the, Dwayne Brenny coming up with the township, the Graham Township Bridge, right? We agree that things probably, we wanted to figure out a way to pay for that as a
Right.
drainage authority. We couldn't.
We couldn't.
Because it was township and everything like that. We're in a similar boat right here. The township has to take ownership of that road in order for the drainage authority to be able to act on that.
This is what we're looking at the screen now. Is that on the screen? Yeah, okay. Is the actual repair plans. And a very similar or almost identical sheet was in the reestablishment documents too. So north is to the left here. This is the main channel. During the surveying phase, we found 28 linear feet of a 24-inch concrete metal pipe, corrugated metal pipe is what CMP stands for. So we replaced it with 40 feet of 48-inch corrugated plastic pipe. We determined through the engineering that 48 inches is what's appropriate to maintain the drainage through here. At the same location, at the same location. Because it's longer, the stationing is a little bit different. But you'll see the invert elevations are a little bit lower because we're trying to match that as constructed and subsequently improved profile elevation. So that's how it looks like engineering-wise from this side. And this is where, when we were out there surveying, we found up a built-up section of what was, we would presume a field road because it wasn't maintained as, to public road standards, even as a gravel
On the
roadway.
property line.
And so this image is overlaid with GIS data that shows parcel lines. And obviously, aerial photographs are not 100% accurate, but these parcel lines correspond with quarter section lines. This data has the old landowner's name too, this Robert Anderson, Etal, and others, is not the current owner of that. But yeah, so that's what we found, a culvert there, and we replaced one at that location.
Chris, do you believe that culvert was the 2000 or 2004 culvert that was put in there?
It could be, yeah. Because, that's 24 years old. It was sitting in rust because nothing was draining, and it was in pretty poor condition. I have a hard time believing that it's any older than that, so.
That was put in privately.
Correct, yeah. So,
Mr. Chair.
Based on the documentations of wetlands and mitigation and impacts, that's a sensitive subject too. If we start saying that it's a public roadway, if we dealt with our County Road 7, public entities have different mitigation requirements than as of a private entity seeking exemptions and stuff from wetland impacts.
Commissioner Pinsky?
Keeping in mind our jurisdictional boundaries on what we can and can't do, Chris, what do you think that cost would be to put in what Mr. Marsh and his grandfather are looking for?
Yeah, I'll just look at what our contractor bid for. If I can find it in my specs here.
So that would evidently take another 48-inch culvert, right?
Well, yeah, we wouldn't want to put anything smaller than that because we want to perpetuate the drainage through that location.
Well, and Commissioner Pinsky, as he's looking that up, Michelle, is that something we can do?
You
I
can,
don't-
I think it gets assessed back to the landowner if we put in that additional culvert.
To all landowners or just?
I
No.
believe it would just go to the particular landowner that wants
Particular
that field crossing.
I have a quick question. Can you hear me fine if I'm not?
Yep.
talking into the mic? I don't wanna get too nitpicky about the language, but it sounds like maybe that you have to. Where it talks about original, or is it as constructed and subsequently approved? It is as constructed and it's not or. So if I am conceding that this is not a township road anymore, hasn't been for decades, but as constructed there was a culvert there, am I just falling into some donut hole of the policy here, or, cause I'm not particularly hung up on it becoming a township road. As I say, I don't think we're interested in having the township come plow out here between two fields. And I understand that would be very tidy if it was, like,
You'd
this
have
would have been
trouble
two
with the township,
emails
I would-
to the right people and this would happen. So it's a private crossing that was there originally, and repairing the ditch as constructed, I guess I feel should include that, but I'm not a lawyer and I'm not familiar with these statutes.
I'm trying to pick up the other end. I'm hearing that we're not so sure that that was there as constructed. We know this one was, but not the one that he's talking about. Do we know that? Was the culvert in there that, because I'm understanding Tyler say there was a culvert there originally as constructed in the location that he's requesting to have one put. Do we know if there was one there or not? Do we have records that say there was a culvert there?
Other than just the road orders, that I think there's some documentation that a road, or back in those days they were called a wagon road,
Yep.
probably existed. Documentation on culvert size and things like that, no, I don't have that. And I think when we embarked on this repair project, and which led us to the reestablishment proceedings, reestablishment drainage record proceedings, when we were doing that field work, we didn't find a culvert, an additional culvert that was in a different location here.
So then the answer through the reestablishment of the record does not show one.
Correct, that is correct. Yeah, we did not show an additional culverts, other than where this one exists now.
Yeah.
But on the, as originally constructed, probably did have a culvert in there, right?
Well, to speak to like whether or not we can say if there was a culvert there, there is the alignment of the it's an establishment document, the alignment that shows a road and a ditch, and another establishment document that is the specs that say at roads there will be culverts. I feel like these two things in conjunction speak pretty strongly to the fact that there was a culvert. And I know like nobody's under oath here or anything, but my grandfather is here and has told me countless times that he removed the crumbled up remains of a concrete culvert at that property line because the county was not repairing this ditch, and he had hoped to, sorry, I'm pointing at a screen, maybe you can't see.
We know where you're pointing.
Yeah, all of this is my grandpa's property, and he was hoping to have this ditch work. So he cleared out a pile of concrete remains, and as I say, had he never done that,
You'd be okay.
He'd be
right, and this just seems like every single place where I look for like, here's the piece, like, so the piece that I'm here looking for is you guys to use your discretion about what is sensible, what makes sense, what is, I think, perfectly safe to say that there was a culvert there originally. There's between 1903 and 1916, I believe I've got 4 different things that are saying there was a road there. And then I have a spec that says we put culverts where there are roads.
Chris, what did you come up with for a replacement for a cost?
Well, okay, so our contractor was charging us, where'd it go again? $128 per foot for 48-inch pipe. So
And you put a
I don't know how much more feet we want to put. So
how many feet? Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, you want 20 feet. So times it by 2 and at a 0,
2,500.
So.
I'm gonna say, Tyler, I get where you're coming from, and the problem that I have is we don't have the authority over township roads, or whether they're a road, whether they've been built as a township road, whether they're maintained, or whether the township said, I washed my hands of it, 80 years ago, right? And it, no matter what I'm looking at, is I think it still needs to go back to the township. If the township takes control of or authority of that road and says, yeah, it is, I think the drainage authority would be happy to put a culvert in there.
Well, but then the township will be
The
assessed.
township has to be, yes.
But I have a question, if I am I supposed to say Mr. Chair?
No, you're fine.
So,
You're not the chair. What are you talking
On-
about?
Oh, yeah, true.
say the township is like, as I think would be the case, they're like, it wasn't abandoned, but should we try to reassert the easement? There is a statute that the neighbor could use, I don't know that they would, but probably they would, say, no, you can't do it, it hasn't been maintained for 40 years, so okay, it's not a township road now. And that, none of that actually changes the fact that as constructed, there was a culvert there. I'm not interested in having a township road there, I'm interested in being able to cross the ditch, and as constructed, I feel I've established that I would have been able to if it was put back to the way it was originally constructed. And whether the township is offering to pay for it because they're going to reassert this easement, that doesn't really matter to me. I understand it matters to you. You guys have a bottom line. But this existing road got built in a new place.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
The bottom line is we cannot overreach our bounds as a drainage authority. We can't tell the township that we're replacing this and then assess them back. They have to take ownership. We cannot, as a drainage authority, just go and replace this culvert because we think it was there before, and we believe you it was there before. We don't have that authority. We're the lucky ones that get to make everybody else take ownership and pay for everything. That's what we get, and I think this really needs to go back to the township. And if not, unfortunately, it's probably gonna end up coming out of your guys's
Mr.
profit.
Chair.
Commissioner Heinen.
Michelle's got a question.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Well, I just wanna remind you, when we go through that reestablishment of records proceeding, that actually reestablishes our ASIC. So those records become the official record of the ditch. So that becomes your as constructed and subsequently improved plan. And unfortunately, that particular culvert was not identified during that process.
Could it be petitioned to be looked at again by the by?
I guess he could probably.
Could, but it's more cost to the drainage authority.
Right.
I've got a question about that. So I've looked at the County Ditch 14, I believe they called it the final proposal or something to that effect. Maybe it's on here.
Okay.
The final repair report or something.
Just remember that.
These pages that call out where culverts will be placed, it doesn't call out anything there. You know, these, we're right here. They're not calling out culverts here. They're not calling out culverts here where they were eventually placed. Then this was brought to a later, well, actually, I believe this was when I requested this, and then Chris brought this in, which is a different page that is not included in the final report that shows this culvert, says remove this, remove and place one here, and this isn't in, as far as I can tell, this is not in, if you go online and you look at County Ditch 14's final report, this isn't there, these culverts aren't in it, neither of them.
Michelle, question. Can the ditch authority request a reevaluation of that area from that engineering firm, even though the final report's been approved?
So I think you would have to probably repetition the reestablishment.
Oh, boy.
That's gonna cost way more than $2,500.
Right, and then you assess it to the ditch authority, the township.
The whole
And
ditch.
then it's,
You know, I look at it like this, so Graham Township had a culvert in there that they basically says not to replace, and then it washed it out, and we thought we could maybe help them out, and we didn't. I mean, here we got one where we got hearsay that says there was a culvert in there, and there was no evidence when they were out there digging that there was a culvert in there. So I mean, I think it's between the township and the party here to decide that, and I don't see any reason, being on the town board, I don't see any reason why the township would ever come back and make claim to that. they have no.
Right, and I guess I'm operating on the assumption the township's not going to come back and make a claim to it. It's,
No, but they're not gonna wanna pay for the culvert either.
well, nobody does. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys
We
don't.
can't. So
We
we're-
can't.
We can't.
We're just the authority over everybody.
So when there's a private culvert and that's assessed back to landowners,
No.
or the authority that says that happens, or that gets assessed to the individual landowner?
Individual.
Okay, so the owner of
All
this
private
40
ones
acres.
are
All
range
private
is
ones.
48-inch, 40-foot culvert?
I don't think so.
See, when it's existing,
Then it
when
goes
we
to the-
find a culvert,
Ditch
we
authority.
replace it as part of the ditch authority, except for those public road crossings.
Yes.
So.
The
and-
problem
and-
here again is we didn't find one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so here's maybe to try to simplify that to wrap our heads around it. Okay, a road most likely or may existed in 1903. One road, but not two roads. Sometime in the course of history, that crossing of the ditch, it was either constructed where it is today or was moved with or without approval north of it. I still don't think we've ever found documentation where there was two crossings at that location. The drainage project repaired a culvert or replaced one crossing at or near that section line between section 14 and 23. If we had found documentation, I think during that reestablishment of drainage records process that there was two crossings in close proximity, we would look at that. So.
I don't remember if this one's 38, 53, or 39, but this is where the private crossing is hopping to the north of, this is branch 3, because this piece of property is, wait, I'm having a hard time here. This is very small, this is very big for the neighbor. That's why this happened. So there's your second crossing. I'm saying there was a crossing on the property line, and so this culvert that's on the neighbor's property, I don't know if we got the answer to that. That is assessed to everybody because it's existing.
Yes.
And
the whole system pays for it.
right, and the one I'm just saying this one on the property line got missed, and in part because of the actions of Sam Montgomery, in part because of the actions of my grandfather cleaning up the crushed old concrete there. And is there, I mean, do you want him to get up here and speak to that? Does that change anything? Like,
Well, I mean, I believe you if you said that he took it out of there,
Yeah.
but if we don't have it in the record, that makes it tough.
And so about the record, the black and white one on the bottom here, I thought this was a little odd. So I work off blueprints at work, and things that say like preliminary or bid set, this is what I get when I click on the final report, not for construction. And then this is the one that showed up at the agenda when I made a fuss about this culvert placement. And they are different in that one addresses the culvert, the other doesn't. The final report that has the map of all the culverts, they're not on there. And so I guess, I don't know where this one came from. I don't know that we ever had a chance to see it and bring this up. I mean, I feel like this would have gone very differently if you guys were like, we're gonna do this next year. And I said, before you do, I wanna show you all this stuff from the past. Where people have been crossing here. I mean,
I think what makes it tough too is we went through the public hearing processes on it. So, you know, with the reestablishment of the record, right, Michelle? I mean, we've had public hearings to address some of that potential
Right.
stuff. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that was brought up then.
no, it wouldn't have been, I don't know what I was doing at that time, but it
Yeah.
wasn't following this thing really closely.
Sure.
But as I've looked into it, I'm like, well, what would we have brought up? There's nothing in this preliminary report.
There was a action, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
In these public hearings, we actually had a lot of people speak up, and we've had to go out to numerous places to look at things, and
We actually have sent out people with boots on the
Yeah.
ground back out to look at it and say, hey, what's up with this? You
Yeah.
know, meet with landowners, that's happened.
Yeah.
Obviously, that didn't happen in this case, and that's where we're at today.
Right.
But for us to go back, correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, we'd have to go back to a public hearing status.
And start over.
And that would all be charged against this system. And we still don't know what the end result would be. Is that right?
Yes.
Because we would be reestablishing the reestablished record.
So in the reestablishment of records, there is the original alignment was used, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the original specs were used, and I feel like right there, those two documents in conjunction point to there was a culvert there. I found all these other maps and plot books and stuff to corroborate that, but the two documents which were used in reestablishing this would have indicated that.
Mr. Chair, we keep going around in a circle. Chris, is there a way that you can just get a hold of the people that did the reestablishment and just ask them a quick question about that? Could there be a culvert missed? Because I think how we are today, we're gonna keep going around in a circle and we're never gonna get anywhere. And maybe we just ask that quick question without going through reestablishment of everything at this point.
Yeah, and I have, because there was other locations too that were questioned too. And, yeah,
So you talked
during
to
the
Houston
surveyor
about this?
phase, didn't find it, and when the excavator was out there, our contractor, when they were excavating, didn't find it either. And I think that's kind of the problem. Mr. Marsh even indicated that if there was one, they
took
picked
it out.
up the pieces of a culvert themselves, before.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe, so just to try to find something, some common ground. Michelle, is there anything that allows procedurally the board to say that the reestablishment missed something and they're taking action as a board to deviate from it without opening it up for public, or is everything coming out?
I can certainly go back and look. I mean, there could be something
Okay.
in the statute that addresses a scenario like this, but the top of my head, it's.
But then we're gonna open sorry, Mr. Chair, we're gonna open ourselves for everybody to come back and question.
You do
setting
that,
precedents.
if you open up a public hearing, then everybody gets, everybody gets notified.
It's just not on this ditch either.
So-
Oh, no,
It's
We're
every
opening
ditch.
it.
in the branches. Let's fast forward a little bit. Hypothetically, ditch authority says, no, they're not putting it in. Can the landowner request to be able to put it in privately?
Yes,
And
yes,
who approves that? Does the ditch authority or can you approve it?
I believe, I don't know. Now that we've just now completed some repairs, I don't know if we've actually had that request. I would think that we could come up with some kind of procedure. I mean, we have the engineering and everything there that tells us the appropriate size culvert and at the elevation that it needs to be placed at. I don't know if the drain authority needs to approve every request.
Yeah, I would have to look. I know that we did put in some additional culverts for people for field crossings in 13 or 15 as part of a negotiation. So yeah, I think I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
Were those done during the reestablishment of the record or during the repair?
No, so it was a private field crossing.
Yep.
And we had some issues with something being cleaned out that should not have been
Yep,
cleaned out.
yep.
So it was part of the settlement agreement.
Okay.
Meaning lawyers on both sides got involved.
Yeah.
So commissioners, maybe just to kind of keep things moving along, we did recently create a drainage subcommittee. And just to keep the meeting moving along today, is it a possible topic of discussion at a future subcommittee meeting? So no action taken right now, and we just discuss it at a future committee meeting?
I think the three of us would agree with that.
Because you're not on the committee.
That's right.
I mean, I'm willing to.
Yeah, we might as well. I mean, it's issues that hopefully we can avoid an issue like this down the road.
I got a couple ideas, but
Okay.
I wanna think on them a little bit more.
So is that your wishes to move this onto a subcommittee level?
Yes.
Bring it back?
Yes.
Okay, which I know then will in turn deal with one of his other items that he's gonna talk about today. So let's move into that, if we can, move into your, about your, plan with the DNR.
I understand. Really quickly, can I ask, the subcommittee meeting,
Hasn't been established, we're gonna establish
We
it
haven't-
today. It's on our agenda.
Gotcha, okay. Yeah, I mean,
You'll be the first to know probably.
all right,
on when
yeah,
that-
my push is that I'm planting these things in like 2 months, or 3 months, something like that. Anyway.
And to kind of cut short of that, is your intent to plant these items in the buffer area?
Right, well, that's like the third thing I wanna address, and I want clarification, and I understand if you guys have to be really hard-nosed.
Yep.
And so I'm prepared for that. So the second culvert, and I mentioned it last time, it was just a little bizarre to me how these two got treated so differently. There was a crossing up here, and it leads to, this is like high elevation, and there's a crossing here. I'm pretty darn sure the culvert was there. However, it was reported to have been found somewhere down here, and then this one was not put back in the same place, but actually shifted to go onto the property line, where it goes from serving a purpose to serving no purpose at all, because this property line is nearly parallel to the ditch, such that the only use for it is to go from one property to the other, and this is like smack dab in the middle of a big wetland basin, so you need waders to get out to this culvert. I got a button to push over here. I've got a couple of pictures of that one. I don't know if I want to do that. I apologize, I just have to use the device I'm more familiar with. So I'm just trying to pull up a couple of images to show what what that culvert looks like there. And to really stress that it makes no sense it was put there. It was a private culvert that was found on my grandpa's property and shifted to the property line, which ironically is what I want to have happened to the other one. And for some reason it happened to this one to do nothing for nobody, and the other one, nothing worked out.
So it's already done?
It's done. It's put in, and again, we didn't know this was happening until it was in. I believe Chris got an email from me the day that I found it, because I'd been talking about this one to the south, and then a little further to the north, I went and visited up there, and I went, where's our crossing? That was right here. So, I'm gonna go back to this contraption. That might help a
Yep,
little.
that does help, thanks.
Does it?
Yes.
Doesn't look great to me here, but anyway, this is the culvert. The property, like this picture is looking like straight down the property line. To the right is my grandfather's property, to the left is the neighbor's. And they put this right there where you can now go from one neighbor's property to the other, and these two are not on good terms, and that's never going to happen. Where it used to be was, well, I'm saying the crossing was here, and Chris said they didn't in fact find a culvert there, but the pictures where they say they found a culvert, you can't see anything because somebody's standing in weeds this tall. At any rate, this is a trail that goes right to this high point of land on the other side, and there used to be a crossing right here, and some of these old pictures do show that we had the crossing there. I've asked if they're, like, these things wash out and they go downstream a little bit. I don't know if that ever happened during a flood event. Chris had mentioned that, well, it wouldn't like reinstall itself, and I'm like, well, I can't see that it was reinstalled in these pictures. I can't see anything. So they found something, I don't know, 120 feet or something from where I'm saying the culvert was, and then they shifted it another 80 feet to put it in a place that it's of no use to us. So this one, I'm saying, I don't know if you'll be able to make it out here. The culvert's down there on the property line, and like way back here is where we wish it was. And this was a private culvert on our property entirely, and it got shifted, and now it's on a property line where it doesn't do anything for anybody.
You want to address that, Chris?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Let's go back to. Once again, I'm going to go to the plans because I think that depicts it the best. I think there's some. I believe there's some confusion. We're on the same page. So here's where the location we were just talking about. This is the culvert that Mr. Marsh is. Oh, I skipped to the next page. Talking about that moved. We did find a culvert here, an 18 linear feet of 36-inch corrugated metal pipe. It's really close to the quarter section line. So as part of the repair project, it seemed reasonable and prudent to put it on the quarter section line between two parcels. It ended up moving it about 80 feet. Now in this location, well, you can kind of see it even here. This kind of indicates what we found to be an ATV trail. Once again, our surveyors did not find a culvert at this crossing, and even when we were excavating the channel, we didn't find any remnants of a culvert here. Although there was evidence of an ATV trail. It could have been that the ditch was just so choked with weeds and plugged that you were able to drive an ATV across it. So once again, although this did move slightly, we put a culvert back here at this location where we had found one during the survey, the reestablishment process, and the repair process. We did not find a culvert here where there was an ATV crossing and therefore did not replace a culvert at this location where the ATV crossing was evident. So,
Chris, you talked about moving it to the parcel line. Which one did you move?
Right there.
this one, we moved an 18-inch, replaced it with a 42-inch diameter pipe.
Way back towards that, near that ATV trail?
No.
No,
The other
ATV
way.
trail is up here.
Yep.
We found a culvert here and moved it slightly, about 80 feet. I mean, it's not quite 80 feet because this is 40 feet versus 18 linear feet, so we put a longer pipe.
And you just went to the quarter section.
Yes, we went to the quarter section line. Because
So by
that's,
doing that, then you lose access to the property?
well, these are two different parcel owners, though.
Okay.
I guess this, where it was, you could contend that it was completely within one parcel. So, but once again, was that intended to be on the quarter section line? Because that's where two different parcel owners. So I will, this is one, once again, I asked our consultant, do you have any documentation when you were surveying this of finding culvert? No. We confirmed with our contractor that this stationing, we call it, location, they didn't find any remnants of culvert pieces there either. So even though we do admit that it does look like there was an ATV trail leading to that ditch at that location.
Chris, I think when we did one of the first ones, we had somebody in a similar situation that said they were crossing, and after we repaired the ditch, they could no longer cross with ATVs and that, and they were out of the Twin Cities, I believe, on 15 or 14. And we said we go put one in, but it's at your expense.
Once again, landowners are allowed to have crossings in the ditch. So we hope going forward that we have processes in place where we can document that and we know for sure that they went through the correct approvals and stuff. So
I guess if it was entirely on my grandfather's property, then it's a private culvert, and it was determined for some reason, no, that one isn't. And I mean, I'm sure you guys are picking up on the fact that these two culverts were both right next to property lines, and one got shifted and one didn't. And from our perspective, one became useless and the other one is of no use. So I don't know if you'll find this compelling at all. This is, again, that aerial from 1938, and I found it pretty interesting. They actually had their trail in the same exact spot, which goes to this high hill, and they were crossing it right there. So, like, if there was never a culvert there, then that has been completely plugged for a century. And I don't think that's the case. So, if one of them, if it washed out during some flood event and was still on my grandfather's property, I guess I don't see why we wouldn't get to decide where to put it, or just put it right back where it was, and it's not where I want it. I mean, I'm gonna have to slog through a bunch of cattails and stuff to get to it, but it is at least on the property where we can get from one side of the ditch to the other on our property.
Is there two, where you placed the culvert, where Chris placed it now with ditch authority, is that the same property owners on both sides?
It is, so I can back out a little bit. This is an old map, but I think it'll serve. So right here, I should get something sharper to point with.
And are you the owner of both properties?
My grandfather is the owner of both properties, so right here is one of his parcels. This is the property line we were just discussing that is or is not a township road. This is 40 acres owned by the neighbor, and then my grandfather owns 80 right here. So if we zoom in, we're talking right now about a culvert that was placed right here on this property line and was found somewhere over here, and I'm saying, well, that's where we were crossing, that's where they crossed in 1938, and like, I don't think you can find an aerial photo where they weren't crossing right there. And this has all been choked and plugged up with beavers, and you know, a thing I did in my childhood was digging out beaver dams. So I don't know if at some point in the last century this gets dislodged and ends up down there. But if it's found here and gets moved to there, well, it goes from being not in a great spot to in a completely useless spot. And I don't see why this one got treated differently than this one when there's evidence that well, people drive on both sides of this property line, and then a culvert is found there and placed exactly here, not on the property line, because we only put them back exactly where they go. In an email where I had brought this up, you know, Chris says in one part that the drainage authority is not in the business of locating section lines or individual parcel lines. And then in the next paragraph it says that an existing culvert was found near this location, and this culvert shifted about 80 feet to better align with section/parcel lines. And like, we got two culverts that were treated differently and kind of got hosed on both of them because of their different treatment. I mean, if I'm perfectly honest, the one to the south is far more vital. But it seems this one got treated differently than the one to the south, which is, apparently it's very important that that one to the south went back just where it was, and how this one did.
Well, the one to the south, there was clear evidence that the culvert was there, so that makes a huge difference when you're talking ditch authority. And then you got the question of the road, of who's,
I understand
who's responsible for
it's
the
a
road.
complicated thing, and
It's
I'm not-
very complicated.
Yeah, well,
Ditch authority is complicated.
So I would assume that's probably something that the subcommittee had to address.
Yeah.
I just wish this stuff would have been brought up before.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's tough, we can't be, you know.
Again, I don't know where people had access to this before, where it actually addressed these culverts. We had this before, which doesn't indicate anything there.
Unfortunately, Michelle, I think you can verify this, government doesn't allow for common sense these days.
Sometimes not.
You know, and some of this stuff is common sense. If we could just take care of it, we would. But unfortunately, I'm gonna push it to the committee on this one. If you're fine with that, you two.
All right, so we've got the two culverts the subcommittee will deal with. What's the next item?
All right, as I've mentioned, I've got a planting plan with the DNR, something like $6,500, some cost sharing with them to establish a bunch of natives along where that spoils from the ditch were placed. I was initially told no trees. Chris and I met in person, and I said, well, what about shrubs? And he said, okay to shrubs, and then I've later learned that that's not the deal. So I did want to ask, I mean, frankly, I think it would be a variance. I've got some hundreds of shrubs ordered that I think would be well suited to not the top where there's driving to be taking place, but like on the slope. These are plants that grow about that tall, and they are more deeply rooted than grasses. And I've got a few resources that indicate, and I think everybody's common sense would agree, that a more deeply rooted shrub will retain the bank better. And I don't see that it would pose any impediment to repair of the ditch if, frankly, when you're up there, these things are going to be below the level of your feet. And if there was any kind of variance granted, I would be happy for it to be as specific as you guys would like, where it's like you can plant these 3 things there because none of them grow taller than that, but these are perennial woody shrubs.
So Tyler, where specifically on the, are you talking in the ditch channel, are you talking in the buffer area, or are you talking outside of the buffer area?
I'll
Because I can
sketch.
tell you that our intention is to maintain these buffers, and that means probably mowing them or spraying herbicide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I,
16.5 feet on both sides of the channel will be maintained.
I understand. So, and this is just where I wanted a little bit of clarity, because I've read up on this a little bit, and when we're talking about, I believe if I'm understanding correctly, that 16.5 feet starts there,
At the top of the bank.
or does it start at the center?
Statute says it starts at the top of the bank.
Top of the bank.
Okay, so I think I've got that right?
Yep.
So, I'm saying right here, if we had shrubs,
No,
Not for,
The
not
trouble
gonna
is
happen.
The shrubs won't prevent other stuff from growing in there, and we need to spray or trim or some of that.
so I'm curious when you
Mr.
talk-
Chair, what's gonna happen is if we get this 100-year flood, that's gonna block that area. Those shrubs are gonna grab all the destruction that's going, grab all the debris that's going down that system, and it's gonna block that system right there. And that was one of the main reasons why we want nothing inside that channel.
Yep. And that's fine. I don't want to like dither with it too much. I get what you're saying there. I've seen that channel blocked. As I said, I dug it out as a kid many, many times. So if you guys don't want to get too particular, that's okay. But again, I was hoping like, what about like just this upper third or something where like water's never going to get there in a 100-year flood?
Can you guarantee that? Because we can't.
Yeah.
We can't guarantee the water's not gonna get to that height, and if it does,
Virtually, I think when we were in ditch conference, nothing is supposed to happen from in the channel or the 16.5 feet.
So the county, I believe, is reseeding.
Yeah, grasses.
And you're going to just spray like a broadleaf herbicide? Is that the intent? Because I mean, obviously you don't want to.
We haven't decided that for sure
Kill it.
yet.
It's not going to retain that bank.
No, we're not killing the grasses.
No.
Okay. So, and I believe Chris and I talked about this, and you guys maybe have to tell me that I got to do something else. But I got seed. I've talked to Hellman Construction with this, and they're okay using my seed instead of theirs, which is native prairie grasses and forbs. Forbs mean things like milkweed, and they're defined as like not being a bush. They're not a woody perennial, so it's, you know, wildflowers, things like that. Now, if you guys truly do intend to spray it with herbicides, well, then I don't want to do that. If you guys are mowing it, you can mow forbs, and that doesn't hurt them at all.
I don't think we'd spray herbicides on the.
No.
We'd mow.
Okay.
But there could be potential spraying, I mean, on the banks of that channel, if there's growth happening in there, it could easily be sprayed.
Like-
And then we're gonna
Sure.
have overspray getting potentially onto the other areas and killing it off.
Well, and surely going in the water.
Or whoever's
So-
doing that obviously would have to be licensed to be able to handle it.
Okay, yep, so I just wanted to get a bit of clarification on this because I am, as I say, about to invest money in this, and the metrics I've been given have shifted a little bit, so you guys are the final word on it. So no woody shrub within 16.5 feet of this point.
Right.
I've got a question about determining where this 16.5 feet is because this point is not very well established. There are still flags back here that say 25 feet for tree clearing. Is it safe to assume that if I go back towards the ditch, would it be 9 feet? Does that work?
Yeah, but Chris, I want to clarify that because some areas of our ditches have a 25-foot easement.
Yeah, because if you go back to the original specs, some locations
said to spread spoil piles back that far. So that's what we were doing, so we could spread spoil piles back that far.
Okay.
But I think going forward, our statutory obligation is to maintain 16.5 feet. And I don't know if it's the Drainage Authority's intention to do anything beyond that after the repair is completed.
But what could happen in a repair under a major event with sediment in that ditch, we could go back to the 25-foot mark
I don't.
for spoils.
I think that's gotta be agreed upon about with the property owner, I believe.
We have that 16.5.
Yeah, we got the 16.5 feet, but if the spoils, we can't dump the spoils 25 feet unless we contact the property owner.
But you could on the repair,
We could on the repair, but not after.
not on the maintenance.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there could be a petition in 10 years to repair that ditch because of a major event.
Yeah.
And we potentially could be putting spoils 25 feet back under a repair.
Yeah, I think.
Because they'd go out there and stake it again at 25 feet.
We probably would because of this repair. I'd like to think that there hadn't been any formal repair for, since this ditch was established, so we wouldn't be dealing with that volume of sediment sometime in the future.
I think our intent, Tyler, is to maintain these buffer zones, and that's gonna be a combination of
That means
mowing
you
them,
guys are coming and mowing them?
spraying them. Somebody is, we're gonna contract it out, however it's gonna work. You're gonna see some farmers that are gonna do their own.
Sure.
They're gonna cut their own hay off of it, and that's fine, it's their land, they can do that. But there's an easement there that allows us to work in there.
Yep.
And if you're gonna spend money in there, there's a high chance we're gonna wreck it.
Right, that's why I'm here to talk about it.
Yep.
And I don't wanna apply
That's why-
pressure to you to change things. I wanna get clarification on exactly what's happening. I've got grasses, forbs, shrubs, trees. So I guess, to be clear, is this 25-foot marker, that's 25 feet according to this same point, so I can use that 25 feet to establish where 16.5 feet is? Cause that's still perfectly evident out there, where this is all kind of, it's this.
Provided that somebody didn't go out there and move the flag unknowingly, and then we,
Sure. It appears to me they're all still in
Okay.
a straight line, and that
I
is
think
right
it's
where the
6.
brush cutter stopped, so.
I would caution from using that, because in some cases, that 25 feet is from the center of the ditch. And trying to factor in a 1-to-1 slope for that depth of ditch would take up some of that 25 feet. It's possible that 25 feet might be 16.5 feet once you get to the top of the bank. So,
That's what I'm wondering, if that 25 feet is from the center or the top of the bank.
and I can't guarantee that or confirm that at this point.
And I
So
think
it's
we're
something I have to
leery
check
of, we're
into.
leery of when we go through our maintenance project of wrecking your investment.
Right, yeah, we don't want to.
Because we have easement in there,
Right.
and we don't wanna do that.
Yep, and
we'd have to have.
My interest every step of the way on this is I'm trying to improve the habitat. I actually saw I read through one of the statutes at some point, and it said that the replanting, cover crop or whatever they called it, you guys are supposed to lean towards the natives and stuff. And I spoke with Hellman Construction. It sounds like we got DOT Ditch Blend 2 or whatever it is, and that's not the natives at all, which is where I was stepping in trying to do something better for the habitat. And I think the grasses and forbs, I'll let them buck, and if you guys mow them, that's fine. And if there's some selective spraying of a buckthorn in the future, like a couple of dandelions are gonna die, and I'll be fine with that. Shrubs and stuff, I don't wanna put anything out there where you guys are gonna mail a letter and say, cut them out now, or we're gonna cut them and send you the bill. And that's what I'm here to address. And there was,
I just want to caution, we know that those projects are not complete. We know the contractors are going to have to come back this spring and dress up some of the spoil piles. And I just want to put that out there. I mean, the contractor may, and us inspecting it, may be driving up and down both sides of that ditch in the buffer area.
in the spring.
I like to say, we could say things like, okay, this property, stay out of it and stuff, but there's gonna be employees and stuff. I just wanna throw that out there. That's a risk too, that this spring, there'll be workers and contractors out there still doing work on that ditch. And I can't 100% guarantee that we'd be able to avoid areas where, some things were just planted.
That's why I think the easy answer is stay out of the 16.5 feet. I mean,
Right.
because it's gonna get wrecked. Like he said, we're not even finished out there.
no, I understand perfectly well. The conversations I've had with Hellman were just that they said, yeah, we'll spread the seed that you give us if you want, which means to me that they're gonna use their same seeding, their same mulching, their same timetable. So whatever treatment their grass that they've already planned for was gonna get, this seeding would just get the same treatment where like, yeah, okay, maybe a truck drives over it, but it's no more bulldozers coming through here.
No.
Um,
Yeah, because seeding would be one of the last events.
Yep, and this is what I've talked to them about.
Yeah.
So the grasses and forbs, you just like let them do their DOT blend too.
Because otherwise, I think we're gonna have everybody else wanting to do their own blend. You know, in this
Yep.
particular case, Elman's willing to do that, but
Well,
again,
if I-
we're trying to keep it the same through our buffer areas on all the ditches as best as we can.
If I lived on a ditch, I'd wanna do orchard grass, because I could use it. You
Sure,
know,
as a farmer.
That's the conversation we'll have. You have a different thing of what a buffer should look like than what I do, and that's.
I saw this right across from your bathroom out there. I thought maybe you'd think that was funny just because I was planning on talking.
How
about
ironic,
this.
huh?
It's 30 feet away. So anything I do here is at my own risk, and
I would say so, yes.
Yep, okay. That, I guess, gives me a bit of an indication of where you guys are likely to go on the next thing, as some of you are probably where I know, Scott, you're where I had a conversation with Chris prior to the tree removal. There was there is still a big old American elm tree that was right next to the ditch, and I put caution tape on it and then made some phone calls and said if there's any way that this can be spared, it would be a very worthy thing to do. A little bit of background, if you're not tree geeks, is, Dutch elm's disease nearly wiped them out. I recently read a figure that it's 1 in 100,000 of these trees were resistant to Dutch elms, and this one is this big around, resistant to Dutch elm's disease. It would sure be great to save it. Right now, it's still standing. I think the fact that, in fact, I can show you, it's right about there as far as the ditch profile is concerned. Maybe not that close. It being there was not an impediment to the repair that's happened thus far. I mean, everything happened right along there. Commissioner Johnson did speak to the fact that, you don't want to get into like a slippery slope situation. I guess sometimes I'm resistant to that argument because not everything is a slippery slope, but everything could be speculated to become one. I'm not asking to plant tons of trees right there, but this one's already there, and I'm wondering if it can just stay for its natural life. Not all trees everywhere, but this one.
Who takes care of it when it does tip over?
I'd be happy to say I do.
Yeah, I know, but the problem is if he no longer owns the land and you sell the land, then we're gonna be
Right, so
dealing.
what is the reason? My interest in this is that he plans on this 60 being left to me. So,
Chris, what is the plan for the tree? Are we done with the ditch except seeding?
Well, there's some dress up. We know we have to dress up some spoil piles, make them more traversable to wheeled traffic and seating. Essentially, the channel's been excavated and at the correct elevation. So, it just kind of comes back to policy. We kind of established a policy that we clear trees on both sides of the ditches.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, last fall, we tried to be good neighbors because there was a tree stand in one of them, and we just said, we're not gonna tear this down during hunting season.
Yeah.
But we're gonna come back and finalize it.
Yeah.
This is one of them, I assume. I think is there 3 total?
Was there 3? Was there 3
3
trees
total trees left?
yeah, and the other ones I can get over. One, Grandpa thinks it's a wild plum. I've got 100 more of those seedlings coming. I'm not gonna die on that hill. There's a tiny little white oak, which would be great to leave. I'm not in here trying to twist your arm on that one. This American elm is in a category of its own. So, I mean, I guess you can use the other two. I guess I hope to illustrate that I'm trying to be as reasonable as possible. That's just one tree that, like, when I look at the whole 60 acres, there's maybe 1 or 2 more on 60 acres. And I'm like, it's 1 in 100,000 trees. And for some reason, there's some genetics here that are working out. And it wasn't in the way for the repair that's happened thus far. trying to find, I do have a picture of it, if you care.
Subcommittee topic?
Well, I mean, I think that's something we can get a consensus from the board on, I mean.
We did clear trees on both sides.
Mr. Chair.
The entire length of this ditch.
I remember when we started these ditches, we were trying to be good stewards of the ditch and or the land.
Right.
We cleared one side of the ditch.
Just on one ditch.
And guess what happened?
They came after us.
The farmers came back to us and asked us what we were doing because we didn't clear the other side. Yeah. And we had a mess,
We
a
got
fiasco.
thrown completely under the bus.
Completely. And we were told we didn't know what we were doing. Okay? Then we took the approach, we are clearing both sides, all trees, all brush, everything of each ditch, which all farmers were in compliance. They were actually happy about that. And now we've got, landowners coming to us and saying, we've got it, we want to leave this and we want to leave that. Now that opens the door for other landowners that have the ditch going through their property that we haven't started yet to say we want these certain trees left here too. What kind of precedents are we setting, I guess? And I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Well, and part of the problem is, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but CD 14, I mean, we bypassed $3 million worth of wetland mitigation and we didn't excavate this whole ditch because of that.
There was parts that we did not clean it all the way down to the as constructed, and sections where we skipped sections of the ditch where we didn't do any excavating, so we could avoid impacts to wetlands.
But with that said, a landowner could also petition us to do it.
I think they could. Yeah, I think they could, and then we would be forced to look at that issue again, and then go through the public hearing process, and once again, show the cost of what that mitigation was.
I mean, one of these large basins that was left in place was on my grandpa's northern parcel, and you're never gonna hear from me about clear it out. I'm trying to put natives back.
Well, that's not. But my point is, we have the opposite problem too.
Yeah, you got a problem no matter which way you go, and what Mr. Heinem was saying, initially trying to be good stewards of the ditch and the land, coming up against issues there, I don't think is a reason to cast those motives aside. I did find this, if anybody found it interesting, it's right there at the top of the crest. It's a big old elm tree, and it stands alone right now, and I'd love to leave it there.
Can you find that it's got any genetic value that somebody could come and harvest something off of it for Dutch elm resistance?
It has been suggested to me that the seedlings that would ever pop up off of it should be a good thing. So they're going to pop up right here where you guys don't want them, and they'll get mowed or sprayed or whatever, or I'll pull them up and go, hey, these are Dutch elms resistant elm trees. So not that I'm going to make a business out of it, but yeah, it is a thing that is worth leaving. For the fact that 999,999 died and this one lived.
Well, there is something to that, I will say, because when the Dutch elm was going through St. Paul, they came out and said that they are hoping to breed Dutch elm resistant trees. So,
Mr. Chair, I don't mean to be devil's advocate, and believe me, if it'd be my property and my tree, I'd be doing the same thing you're doing in front of us right now. I agree with that. But we have to maintain that ditch. If you have a strong windstorm and everything come through there and those branches break off and the tree is still standing where those branches are probably going to end up, they're going to end up in that ditch. Now they're going to create another problem for us in that ditch, in that waterway. That was the whole idea of us getting rid of trees in that whole area, is to prevent that happening.
Well, that's what happened on CD6.
And-
Susan went out there and saw it when we left the trees. They're all
Correct.
hanging over the ditch.
They're all hanging over the ditch and in the ditch already again, so you already know what my stance is.
We have some consensus on the tree, or do we, as subcommittee, really need to deal with this too?
I think I think we got consensus. The problem that I'm seeing with this is we're setting a precedence at that point.
Exactly.
Everybody with an oak tree, or I really like this pine tree, you know, and it becomes a, how do we dictate that one got to stay, but these 10 don't? And we're gonna be going out and evaluating all of these different trees.
I'm off the subcommittee then.
The committee, well, it'd be the
You
committee.
guys wanna take this on and you
No, I'm off if we're going to evaluate.
because we've all been on these tours of these ditches and we've only begun to fight on them.
Oh, God.
I mean, it,
Yeah.
I guarantee somebody's gonna come through and look at that and go,
Why did that happen?
you know,
All right,
oh,
so we have consensus on the tree, needs to go.
I think so.
Commissioner Schlangen, Heinen?
You know what my consensus
Mr.
is.
Pop?
Everybody else had to. I'm sorry.
All right, so we've got an answer on the natives, we've got an answer on the tree. Subcommittee's gonna look at the 2 culverts. And we're gonna establish that now, so those 2 culverts shouldn't affect your timeline because you got an answer on the other ones. Is that correct?
I mean, there's things that I wanna do on the west side of the ditch, and I'm either gonna be hopping across it and then dragging stuff across with a come along,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna be driving across a culvert.
Sure. Well,
So-
I mean, I think it's a fair statement to say hypothetically that even if those culverts get approved, it's gonna be later spring before they're installed.
Sure.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we're dragging the decision out, I'm just saying it's not.
Right, yeah,
gonna happen
and
tomorrow.
I'm not asking anybody to be hasty about it, like,
Yeah.
I've taken a lot of time to put all this together, I'd love for you guys to take some time to consider it, and like, to consider it as openly as you can, you know, look for a way, like you say, the common sense is a little bit beholden to the letter of the law on some things, but if you look closely at the letter of the law, if there's a way, and you can go, oh yeah, I think we missed this reasonably, it was there, like, please do work with us, it's important, you know, for what I plan on doing with the property in the future, and, you know, I've already got, my little girls are excited about planting trees with me this spring, and eventually this will go to them, and, right now, my money's tied up in saplings, so, and I wanna let you guys know too, that the DNR forester I've been working with, we drew up a plan for this bare ground that was exposed because I saw an opportunity that was like, well, look at this, there's not one buckthorn in this, and I should establish something before buckthorn moves in. The plan was drawn up affecting that area after talking to Chris, and he said shrubs would be okay, so I only did trees on the outermost part. Since I learned more, I've spoken to the DNR forester, and he said, I'm fine with you putting trees elsewhere on the property, I just want that many to get planted.
Yep.
So I'm not being put in a great deal of hardship on that setback. I truly was coming in here because I want clarification, I wanna make sure that I plant things where they're gonna be allowed to thrive, and there's lots of other acres for me to do it. I thought I was really onto something here with this bank retention. If you guys are confident that grass is gonna be up to the task, I think you may weigh that against the fact that a shrub would retain this bank better than a grass would, and that might actually be a repair.
Well, and one thing I comment to that is we've had trees that have grown out of the banks, right?
Mhm.
I mean, like this.
Yeah.
They're not, those stumps are not removed because we're trying to save that embankment, you know, or it's gonna fall in.
Sure.
So that's where there may be some potential because those are gonna sprout, right?
Gotcha.
And so there may be some potential herbicide application there, because you can't get in there to mow it, you can't get in to mow the channel. So those things have happened on the side banks of those channels already.
Okay.
Prior ditches, and I think that's the point, it's just, we're gonna stay out of them.
Okay.
And not disturb them. So anyways, we will let you know about the subcommittee time, that's on our agenda today, we've gotta set it. So we're gonna set it on our schedules.
Okay.
And, we'll have more discussions on those culverts. I think we've got consensus on the trees coming out, we've got consensus that there's nothing being planted in the buffers.
Okay.
And just so you're
Do you
aware,
formally have to say I have a motion to cut these trees down, or did you guys already do that?
well, it's in, I don't know that we need. a
I don't think
motion,
we
it's
need
a
to do
policy.
that.
Okay, I
To remove
don't know how it works. so.
And I do wanna comment one last thing, Chris, and I don't know, Tyler, if you're aware, if we've talked about this, but your grandfather, and Christine could probably confirm this with me too, should have been paid damages for these buffer areas.
Yeah, I'm not begrudging the fact that you guys need room to do the work.
I just wanna
No, but
you to
he-
understand that.
he financially-
He should have received financial, a check for the buffer.
Yeah, he hasn't gone
damages.
through those details with me at all.
Okay.
The tree thing, this is me when he said, and I'm gonna leave the 60 to you, and I'm like, cool, I'm gonna plant trees.
I'm
want
just letting you know,
habitat?
part of our discussion on our policy of cleaning those buffer zones is because we have paid, the ditch authority has paid damages.
Yep, I do
to
understand
those
that.
landowners.
Okay.
So.
Well, yeah, I think I
Okay.
got what I needed on the clarification on those buffers, and we'll just wait to hear. Should I expect to hear from Chris or yourself?
We're gonna set a time right now. It's
Oh,
the next
okay.
thing on the agenda.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we need to set a date and a time for our subcommittee meeting.
Yeah, we
The-
kinda
The main
deviated
agenda item
from-
will be maintenance issues, but we obviously have taken on these two.
Have we decided who's all on the subcommittee?
You and I.
I know that part.
And Chris.
And Chris, we're gonna have another one or not?
Michelle's gonna probably be part of that, maybe.
Yeah, you gonna,
When invited.
You're
okay.
invited
Yeah, we'll do, oh. So all subcommittees, okay.
to this one.
Okay.
What are you
Well,
thinking, Chris?
You want the ride along, Michelle, right?
Okay, so I did reach out to our consultant, and our contractor, cause I thought we wanted to have our
Houston
Hellman
and the
Construction out there.
Yes, you're right.
So Hellman is out this week. I don't even know what my calendar. That's one thing I forgot to look at my calendar compared to these. Next week, Wednesday through Friday. Is there any time that works?
Next week, what?
Wednesday through Friday.
Wednesday's transportation day at the Capitol.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
I got
Thursday and
mine
Friday
too.
don't work for me either. So let's go to the week after. What's Tuesday, the 21st?
19th.
19th.
Or 19th, yeah.
Board
That's
day.
board day.
Is there any desire?
Could we do it right after the board meeting? And are we gonna have a ditch authority?
No, I can't.
You can't?
I got Sunrise Eggs annual meeting.
Okay.
What about Wednesday, the 20th?
Yep, that's open
We have
for me.
a BP.
Director interviews.
Oh, yeah, oh boy. And we have BP meeting before that at 10.
On the 20th?
Yeah.
No, that's
I'm
right.
sorry,
You and I.
the fee meeting.
Yep.
Thursday, the 21st?
That works for me.
Could we do it early?
Yeah.
8?
8 o'clock, sure.
Yeah, I like that.
8 o'clock on Thursday the 21st.
Okay.
And I don't know, Tyler, if he left or if he's coming back, but I would assume we could get him a virtual option if he'd like to listen in.
Yeah, I did check. Is this room available then? Do we?
Let me check. Yeah, this room is available.
Oh, that's a subcommittee,
if
okay.
we-
All right, don't worry about that, okay.
Yeah.
So 8 o'clock, 321
not-
here with a virtual option for him if he needs it.
Yep.
Does that work for you, Michelle?
Potentially, I've
Okay.
gotta check my schedule back.
Sure. And I mean, and I say this respectfully, maybe we don't need you right away at the first one, but
Well, if you are discussing this, there might be some things that I was
yeah,
going
on
to.
that culvert stuff,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, Mr. Chair, you're probably gonna need her.
Okay, let's plan that.
Okay.
8 o'clock, March 21st here. Okay, anything else come for the ditch authority?
Well, okay, yeah. So I did have on the agenda to set a time and hearing for
yes.
that road minor alteration. I think at this time, learning from Michelle, it's the actual. In that case, it's actually the auditor that sets the hearing. So no formal action by the board, but I thought we would just discuss potential hearing dates and times. I would recommend the first board meeting in April, the first Tuesday in April, as a time and date for a public hearing to hear the minor alterations due to road construction project.
Okay. The first meeting in April. So April 2nd.
I think I took that whole month off.
Will everybody be present?
So that's a public hearing for,
That would be for the.
Yeah,
county
for minor alteration.
April 2nd?
Yeah. Mhm. That's a regularly scheduled board meeting date, correct?
yes.
Yeah. So, and then, I will work with our auditor treasurer to get mailings out, because we have to publish it in the official newspaper for 3 consecutive weeks.
Okay.
Prior to the hearing, so this afternoon, notices will go out.
And you need to set a time probably?
Yeah, that's right.
10 a.m.
10 o'clock, just set it for 10.
Our board meeting's always.
I feel safe by setting it at 10 a.m. I don't think the board meeting will go before that.
Okay, so
or
we need
the-
a motion on that to get that set?
No, because
Wouldn't
it's-
that be before the
Actually
regular
from
board?
County board, oddly enough.
The
Oh.
board's gotta set
Yep,
that.
the county board's gotta set that.
Well, we
Well,
gotta
she'll
go in
set the time,
Yeah.
but it's actually the county board that conducts the public hearing.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, very confusing. Okay, good. But, so you guys just plan on being there April 2nd?
All right, I think we'll be there.
All right. Pretty good.
And then were we going to do the assessment?
Did you want to talk about maintenance assessment? That was on the agenda today as well for that, to talk about potential maintenance activities and assessments on ditches?
I guess,
Today?
I thought the subcommittee was gonna do that first,
Okay,
was my thought.
okay.
Okay.
Ed?
That's why we're starting at 8, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so you guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure it is.
Although I can make it really quick and dirty.
Okay,
You
Got
could?
a handout,
okay.
so.
Yeah, let's
Go
take a
ahead.
look.
I know. Sorry.
We did make her sit here all night.
Yeah, I've got bleach and
I'll take your hand them out for you.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Can we
All
go-
right.
Yeah, sure.
So really, the only thing we need to discuss at this time, we kind of have a procedure that we've been working with for the large assessments, the repairs. I suggest we keep going forward with that. We can make decisions on future repairs, whether or not we want to start charging at the time that we order the repair with an estimated cost, or if we want to continue to wait until we get those repair costs and assess it then. So that's something that you'll need to consider down the road, but we can consider that with each ditch. So for our annual maintenance account, what we did earlier this year at the first meeting is we established that we will be having a public hearing on assessment costs, well, not a public hearing, but a public meeting on those assessment costs in August, where we'll have Chris come before the board. He will present you with each ditch, whether or not he thinks there's a need for maintenance in the future on this ditch, and what that potentially will cost. So at that hearing, you guys will decide whether each ditch requires something. We're not required to give notice to the individual landowners. We just have to post it like a regular public meeting. However, you can choose to send out letters, you can choose to publish, you can choose to post. For the first meeting, you might want to do something different just to get people in the rhythm of, hey, we will be discussing these yearly assessments at this meeting. If you want, information on that, you should come to this meeting. But that's kind of what I envision going forward, is that we will have these annual meetings. We will publish it like we would a public meeting, and then you'll make some decisions at that meeting regarding what assessments will occur. Christine will then have that information to then put that on the tax roll for the next year, and we kind of go from there. It was really quick, sorry.
So I'm hearing you say, or you're suggesting, because I noticed one thing on here, you're saying every county handles this differently.
They do.
So my question is, do we want to get in, excuse the pun, in the weeds with maintenance assessments yearly that the auditor treasurer's office is gonna have to deal with versus Chris saying ditch 6 needs to be maintained? It's been 2 years. And we're gonna go out for bid and we're gonna accept XYZ and we're gonna go out and maintain it, and it costs $12,000. And we're gonna take the $12,000 and we're gonna divvy it up and we're gonna assess the landowners on CD6, period. We're not getting into, this is what we think might happen, or we're gonna put all this extra work on AT to do assessments yearly and have to track funds.
Well,
So this is all in an effort to make sure that you've got money in the coffers so that we don't have to be holding those hearings and it can just be done as routine maintenance.
Okay, so to that point, if we do it that way, do we have to have a hearing that we're gonna do a maintenance event?
If we do a repair, if it's a petition for repair, so then we have to do that.
Yes.
For routine maintenance, I'd have to go back and look, but that is the concern, is that we didn't wanna have these hearings. We didn't wanna have to do that if we've got money that's in the account because we anticipate maintenance coming up in that year, then we've completed it. We don't have to hold a separate hearing, we don't have to hold a separate meeting.
Yeah.
We address those issues.
Aren't we creating a big nightmare accounting wise? I mean, if we have all these additional dollars and assessments that we've collected, say we've collected $30,000 on CD6, but it only costs 12 to do it. So yes, of course, you're gonna have 18 grand sitting in there for the next round. But, so you're gonna collect money, all this money first. I understand the cash strap on the repair, I really get that. But if we're doing our job on maintenance, there shouldn't be a cash strap to us, a large one.
Yep.
And I'm just trying to, the nightmare to me that this is gonna create in maintenance assessments on 12 county ditches
And
to follow it,
yep.
why
And
not
I'm-
just maintain it and assess it?
And you can do that. That's absolutely.
But I think the landowners are looking for us to get a pot so they don't have to get.
Okay, but then what happens when we make the wrong choice and we hypothetically say, we think this is gonna cost 50 grand to maintain, and it comes in at 10, and we've got their money.
Well, they have a balance.
They sure do, but do you want a balance?
Yep.
You want the county holding your money?
If you
I
live
bet
on the
most
ditch.
people would say no.
There was
And
a,
because
there
if
was a
they get
balance on
assessed-
CD7.
If they get assessed for the maintenance, they're gonna have the same opportunity. We can set and say, you can pay this over 4 years at 4% if you want.
No, so this is only an annual assessment. So this would be a one and done. We don't have to record the document with the recorder's office, a lien, thank you. Tabular lien statement with the recorder's office. So this literally just goes on the taxes. This is your routine maintenance cost because Chris presented at that meeting that we are looking at this type of maintenance for this particular ditch this next year.
In our discussions is that this would become an annual thing. So every year we'll have this meeting and we'll look back and we'll make those adjustments
So you'll
going
have some
forward.
historical data and say, hey, this is.
Yeah, so we assess this much, we can maybe drop that future assessment because, yeah, we've built up that ditch fund and we're not spending that much. So this is something that will have to be adjusted every year. And in my position, those other ditch inspectors, that's what they've come to do every year, is just look at what's in the balance, what they think is the future or the next year's maintenance, and adjust the annual assessments accordingly if they needed to. So.
And there may be years where you're not assessing anything on ditch 6.
Okay.
But
I just think we have to be careful, we're not sitting on a bunch of taxpayers' money doing nothing.
Well, and that's why he comes with documents
Yep,
to
okay.
say,
Yeah.
this is what I'm anticipating. for
Okay,
maintenance for this
I
year.
don't have an issue with that.
Okay. All right, I think that's kind of it. Just wanted to explain kind of the process that we've been discussing for that annual maintenance amount. We can discuss
We'll
further.
talk about
at
a subcommittee, okay.
Yeah, what we do for maintenance and how much that costs, that sounds like a subcommittee
Okay.
topic.
Perfect. Anything else? Members, anything?
Thank you, Mr.
Ditch
Chair.
Authority is adjourned at 12:35.
Commissioner meeting update, we'll reconvene the board meeting at 12:35. I'll start with the commissioner meeting updates. I really don't have anything, other than I want to thank staff for coming in and doing that presentation on overtime, comp time. I wanna stress that I think we got a lot of great employees out there. And, I wanna take this time to recognize them. That was all I have.
That was very helpful, I'd agree. I'd go next, Mr. Chair, if I could. Very briefly, because I missed the last board meeting, I need to go back to the beginning of the month. Attended the drainage conference, excellent again, I thought. Learned more and more things each time. We did have an extension committee meeting on February 12th. Was able to attend in person the 7W, Region 7W meeting in St. Cloud on the 23rd. Commissioner Pop and I attended the Quad County Extension Committee meeting 26th. Commissioner Heinen and I sat in on Human Services Director interviews on the 27th. and I was able to attend this monthly Soil and Water Conservation District's meeting on the 28th. I'm actually attending their Area 2 meeting tomorrow. Jerry asked me to do the welcome for that, so.
Is it in Foley?
It's in Royalton.
What's in Royalton?
Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and kudos to Monty and Jerry provided me with some bullet points for that opening, and so I put together my own thing, and I'll be presenting that tomorrow. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I had some of the same ones he did. We did have a Zoom extension committee meeting for directors, and we're gonna revamp the whole thing because it's not working this way with our crops person. So that was all. I did have one thing you'll be hearing is we did have a state board meeting after the Ledge conference, and they really got into this providing an update for, without getting into it, about the controlling of immigration coming to the state. Evidently, Denver called the city of St. Paul and said, we're sending 1,200 immigrants by plane to you. And they said, no, we can't take them. And Ramsey County said, we don't have the room for them. So now they want to get, and it's, you know, I think in my book, NACO and the Minnesota Association of Counties should not be into this. We should not be into discussing that. We spent an hour and a half discussing what kind of resolution we're gonna put, and we can spend our staff time a whole lot better. But I was in the minority.
Wow.
So.
1,200.
Yep.
Interesting.
And that's all that I really had.
Commissioner Schlangen?
We had the AMC meeting, right?
Oh, the conference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it, I think.
Okay.
Yep, I was at I'm sorry, you done?
Yeah.
I just went out when you said that's it, I think. Same thing, AMC committee, of course, as everybody else who could be there. Same thing with Commissioner Johnson with the interview process. And then I actually got to spend time yesterday with Sarah Rausch.
Sarah R.
Sarah R., thank you. And sorry, Sarah. Yesterday with the financial unit to better understand what they go through. 45 minutes and my head is still spinning of the amount of work that they have to go through and the process they have to go through.
One thing that came out of AMC, or Environment Natural Resource, you know, we had the Timberwolf deal. So, yeah, it's an issue, keep moving south. They asked the DNR if they could try to change the appetite of the Timberwolf to go from venison to Timberwolf.
Yeah. Sure. You go right ahead.
Change the menu.
On that topic, the Timberwolf and the flag, I have taken numerous phone calls and text messages applauding the board for the direction.
Yeah, I have too.
So, okay,
right.
Monty.
Are we doing
Committees of the whole?
commissioner concerns? I got something.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm concerned about our recruitment for the Human Services Director. I don't believe that we can spend the kind of money we're spending on the Deputy Director and a Human Services Director. Something's gotta give.
Hang tight.
We
Yeah.
split off public health. And we gotta quit spending money on some of this personnel stuff. It's gotten, you know, we've added a number of employees, and I think we need to look at how much we're gonna pay and what we're gonna do with our Deputy Director if we hire somebody, because I don't believe right now this county needs a Deputy Director and a Director of Human Services. I think it's an overkill. I think we have to get some of that cost to Human Services in line better than what we're doing.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Pop, I've been waiting for this conversation with you.
Yep.
Okay. I think you should really go over there and really see what Human Services is all about. They have over 120, 130 employees, and that's what I've been doing.
We
is
took 20
shadowing.
out of there, though.
That's what I've been doing is shadowing people in different areas in Human Services. And don't throw them under the bus. It's our largest agency, and if you don't know what they're all about, get involved and go over there and spend some time with them to understand it.
I don't buy all the expense that we're creating for the county in human services and public health. I think we're having some overkill, and I just, we went to the assistant director and we got that done. And now we're gonna add a human service director. And we're not that large of a county that we can continue to put money into this kind of off the taxpayers.
Mr. Chair, I actually, both commissioners, I actually agree with both of you.
Mhm.
From my perspective, I'm sitting here going, we absolutely need to talk about this.
Right.
Whether or not we need a deputy. Again, I'm not saying we do or we don't. I think we better talk about it.
Right.
And I would also agree that from 115 human service staff, which I believe is the number, plus or minus a few,
Yeah.
we've dropped 20 into public health, so we're in that 95 range.
110, I think it is now. The rest are in public health. So I think it's 110, well,
Okay.
whatever. Go ahead.
So whatever. I mean, I just think those are the things we need to get out on the table and discuss. Both items make sense to me.
I agree with that to some extent, but first we gotta hire a human service director first.
But it comes
And
with a
then-
wage.
And then move forward.
And that
after
person's
that.
gonna be involved in that discussion, I
Correct.
believe.
That is correct.
But we may have to have some preliminary discussion so we can inform this person.
Yes.
That this is what we're looking at potentially doing. I think we better come to some consensus about some of that ahead of time.
Well,
So
maybe-
when do we wanna do this?
Well, that's just thinking, maybe you wanna have this on a committee of the whole schedule soon, for some discussion, cause I know we're contemplating possibly interviewing another group of folks here in a couple of weeks. If it's relevant to that discussion, we should probably hammer this issue out. So,
I know with the housing situation, they don't have any money to get everybody housed even. They got a huge problem with the public to meet their needs. A lot of help. You can use money all over the place, but it's not there to meet all the needs of the community.
But where does the money come from? That's the big thing. There is none.
Well, the taxpayers.
Yeah.
So, and if, as much as we can try to give it to the nonprofits, but they get a lot from the taxpayers too. It's just a big problem.
One of the other pushbacks I got is from when it came out about, we had the employee form. I had 2 calls with people that says they don't care about the employee form. They want to know when the citizens are going to have a public hearing. They said the employees are naturally going to want a new building to work in. And then they said, take a look at your staff. 50% of your staff doesn't live in the county, 50% of it does.
Commissioner Pops, did you tell them that we are actually gonna explore that and go
Yeah,
from other
but
cities?
They thought we were more concerned about the employees than we are about the taxpayers.
So when you mentioned that, did they feel a little better?
Yeah, they want to know when.
My from a standpoint of hierarchy, I hate when everybody's gotta have a title. Everybody's gotta have a wage to go with that title.
Right.
And I'm looking at it going, if we need to do a director over there, we already moved somebody, into the director of health health department, right? Health. So you look at it and go, God, do we really? And we heard today in the employee forum that the child support people are looking for a supervisor role or a higher lead role there. And you start looking at it, if we start adding all these lead people, why do we have to have the top heavy on that side? If we do it incrementally, you know what I mean? So
There again is a good example of we need to talk this
we need to
through.
talk about this, yes. And I agree, they are our biggest.
Oh, no question.
Yeah, so I agree, I'm with Commissioner Johnson, I agree with what you just said, we need to understand, but I also agree with what you're saying is, you take out, you take a bunch of these people, make them leads, and now they're over people, which is in turn gonna probably make holes for people to fill that have to be filled too.
Yeah.
Because they're no longer doing the doing the role that they had, they're moved up. Now they're supervising everybody. Well, who's gonna do that role that,
Well, and it's gonna be.
that they
important-
vacated?
It's gonna be an important discussion because it all leads to the culture we're trying to
Yep.
reestablish.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it leads to the culture that our taxes per, per tax dollar is gonna go back to where it was if we don't get a handle on spending.
Mhm.
You can't drop that down to where we were sixth or seventh in the county, cause that was just, hell on wheels.
I agree with that, Commissioner Pop, but I also agree the spending is just not alone in that department.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true. But
So,
it's
so
the
let's
biggest-
not define
it's
only
the
one
biggest
department when
though.
you talk about spending.
But some of the details of that are gonna have to come up, for example, when I first got on board, we would be asked for additional, staff because it's gonna be paid for by this.
Yeah.
Well, is that paid for by this still there? I'm not saying it's not.
Right.
I just need to know if it is.
All of public health is all grant-based. Everybody in public health is
Every dollar.
grant-based, every dollar.
I mean, if you look back, 7, 8
I'm
years.
sorry,
we
that
kept
is
adding-
incorrect. I think
adding-
it's 20% of Jacqueline's is not. The
Yeah,
rest
we
of
kept
it is.
adding 2, 3, 4, 5 employees, and every time somebody, going back to Bob, they came in, it's grant funded. Well, is it still grant funded 5 years later? I wanna know that.
I
If
don't know
that's-
the answer if
If
it is
it's
or
not
not.
grant funded 5 years later, then in my book, that position goes away.
All public health has been over 15 years grant-funded.
Well, but these weren't just public health.
These weren't just
positions.
public health.
No, but I can give you information on other grants too with public health, with human services that are grant-based.
Mr. Chair, then let's set it as a committee of the whole.
I think we should, but the problem is it's gotta happen very quickly.
Well, I should say, Mr. Chair, is the interview dates for human services folks is not absolutely certain. It was a hold the date kind of thing. The committee needs to convene and discuss applicants and make decisions whether or not any of those folks will be invited for interviews. So again, it's not certain, and we could change it if we needed to. If we need to delay it, this is an important discussion. If we need to delay it, then we should. It was again set for the 20th in the afternoon for possible interviews next round. So.
We can also state that in your review process.
Just as long as because you don't wanna blindside them.
No, we can state that in
Yeah.
your interview process too.
Yeah, we could do that, or you guys could. You'll be in that too, right?
Yep.
You too. So, yeah, you guys can do that.
So I had, again, a couple of topics for committee of the whole would be the remote meeting policy, the future of Eastgate, and then now this third one, human services director / deputy director issue. So, what kind of availability do y'all have?
Can we do all three of them together, or is it too
That's what
much?
I'm hoping, yep, all three together.
Just so before you even start, I'm gone the last week in March.
I'm trying to be gone most of April.
Are you? I can't wait. I'm going on vacation next week and I'll be gone
How
for
about
10
the
days.
18th? Monday, the 18th.
Monday the
Are you
18th.
back from vacation?
It's a week. You're gone next week.
I'm gone, yeah.
You're gone?
I'm gone the 15th through the 25th.
Oh, okay, I understand. So
Wow.
Wow, good for you.
is next week out?
So the next 2 weeks are probably out.
Yeah.
The next 2 weeks are out?
I was kinda looking at April 2nd.
Why not
Do we do it
April
at?
1st, April
Oh,
1st?
we got a public hearing now though on that day too.
No, that gets too long. I won't do a county board meeting in 3.
Would you consider coming back on Wednesday the 3rd
Of April?
in the morning?
What about April 1st?
That's April Fool's Day. You shouldn't discuss things like that.
I can do that. I'm scheduled for chicks that day. I don't know when. So I could you go ahead and set it and I'll come in a little late if I need to. I'm just letting you know.
How can you get them that early in the morning?
I don't know when I can get them.
Yeah, right.
Well, these are really important discussions that need to
Yeah,
change.
you
I just
really-
I can't commit it this
that
morning.
you wouldn't want
You
that.
could do the 2nd or the 3rd too. They could push you back.
They could, but how about Thursday the 4th?
Well, what,
I know you hate end of the week.
what happens if we were to do either April 1st and they make that a preference But then if all of a sudden he has chicks coming in, we move it to the third in the morning.
That's your scheduled date, right?
Scheduled that
But
day.
you don't know till that morning though, do you?
Oh, no, I'll know the week
Week
before.
Oh, the week before, excuse me, okay. So first preference is Monday, April 1st at 9.
That's
And our fallback is the 3rd at 9.
I would, if we do the fallback date, I'd like to do earlier because I've got a Tri-County Executive Board meeting at noon in St. Cloud.
So 8,
Yeah,
fallback on the 3rd of 8, okay? Okay, so again, the remote meeting policy, Eastgate, Human Services Director, Deputy Director, you know, I probably should have a conversation with you two about, do we wanna actually possibly delay then any future interviews?
no, keep them going.
Keep them going,
Keep 'em
regardless?
I think so. We'll just inform them of it.
Well, again, we're not convinced we're actually gonna interview anyone.
Right. We don't know that yet.
So, okay.
Is that the only one? Sorry, I keep.
So we got
The only
Wednesday
one little
the
thing
3rd.
is you, I had this in our file.
The secondary one.
You were invited to the state auditor's Main Street listening tour. Apparently these are all virtual this time.
Okay.
We'll know the week.
March 13th at 10 or 1 o'clock or March 14th at 1. Would anyone else like us to register? They're virtual.
Nope, I can't go.
I
Anyone
can't.
like us to register you? March 13th at 10, March 13th at 1, or the 14th at 1.
What's it for?
The state auditor's Main Street listening tour. I think they talk about, you know, the data that they gather and some interpretations of that data, and I think the state auditor just wanted to hear from folks around the state what issues are important to them. That's State Auditor Blaha, yeah.
And what day was that?
The 13th or the 14th of March. Would you like us to register for you for one?
What days of the week are those?
It's
Wednesday and
Wednesday or
Thursday.
Thursday. It's
I
Wednesday or
think
Thursday.
Thursday's gonna be out.
Thursday's
Wednesday's
out.
probably out too if you're at the transportation day.
Yeah, so yeah.
You're
it's
out. Okay,
It's out
I'm
for
sorry.
me.
That's okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, we won't put this in on the calendar then. And that, Mr. Chair, is all we have.
All right,
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
we got a motion and a second, set the committees of the whole, I'll call the answer. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
All
Are
right.
we gonna do the closed hearing?
Need a motion to close?
Yeah. So if you could, the motion is in the agenda item, and I gotta go to the bathroom.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll move to conduct a closed session of the county board under Minnesota statutes 13D.05, subdivision 3, to evaluate the performance of individuals subject to the county board authority.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to go into closed session as presented.
And under discussion, Mr. Chair, I need to mention for the record that the purpose of the closed sessions is to review performance for the following positions: IT Director, Land Service Director, Community Health Administrator, Public Works Director, County Engineer, and County Administrator.
Who can we beat up first?
Okay, thank you.
So, okay, I'll call, well, we should probably wait for Ed.
Put him down as a yes.
You need a roll call on the closed session?
No.
No. Just consensus.
No, we need a vote. That's right.
Yeah, hold on, he's coming.
Not yet. We'll go.
Cause wasn't he one of the motioners?
No, Scott.
I did.
Okay.
Hey, we've gone this long. What's another minute?
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion
Kathy,
carries,
help us with
we're
the signs?
in closed session.